like the gavel?
2025.
Would you like the gavel?
I would like the gavel, but I'll forgo it for now.
Our new member.
All right, so I believe we'll start with a roll call.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and take roll call. Commissioner Grumbine.
Present.
Commissioner Butler.
Here.
Commissioner Dorden.
Present.
Commissioner Drury.
Here.
Commissioner Ensberg.
Here.
Commissioner Lundvik.
Yes, here.
Commissioner McClure is absent, and Commissioner Uli.
Present.
We have quorum. Thank you.
All right, the first order of business is the election of officers. The floor is now open to nominations for the office of chairman. If you have any nominations, you can nominate your person now, and we do not need a second for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Anthony Grumbine for chair.
All right,
Is he willing to accept?
do we have any
I'm-
other nominations for chairman? All right, viva voce or oral vote will be held. All those in favor of electing Anthony Grumbine as chairman, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The floor is now open to nominations for the office of vice chairman.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Uli.
We have one nomination on the floor.
I'll second that.
All right, any other nominations? All right, viva voce or oral vote will be held. All those in favor of electing Robert Uli as vice chairman, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect, quick and painless. All right, the new
Well, I
chairman will
don't know
now
about
conduct
painless,
the meeting.
but it was quick.
It was quick.
I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
And as Commissioner Uli knows from serving on consent with Vice Chair House gone, yeah, it's might not be either quick nor painless, but okay.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
There's a
so-
story coming about that.
Yes. So let's start with, so we've done the roll call vote, we've done the election, so let's do a 2025 appointment of consent review representatives and subcommittees.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to serve on the consent calendar.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, and typically we do like to, especially for, but Commissioner McClure is not here, so that's the best, because then we get to nominate him without him being able to say no. Yep. And as our only landscape architect, I think that's appropriate that we continue to ask him to do it, and hopefully he'll be able to. Okay.
Do you need a nomination for that, or did you just do it?
Do we just talk and appoint?
I don't believe we vote on it, or maybe we vote on to ratify all of them at the end. I'm pretty sure we can just go through and talk it
Yeah,
out,
and
but
get
I
the
believe we need an
everyone's on.
alternate for the architecture reviewer for consent.
All right, does anyone want to be the alternate for architect consent review?
I'll alternate to Mr. Uli on consent review.
Great, thank you very much, Commissioner. All right. Okay, so that covers consent, and now we have our subcommittees, which, let's go through our list. And, great, we got it up here. So, let's go through and then, so the story, well, should I just do the spoiler alert story of what's gonna, what's gonna happen about our new commissioner that never happened? That never was? Or is there something, or is he?
Mr. Chair, it hasn't been announced, so I think I know what you're referencing, so I would hold off on that.
Okay,
Right
so
now,
we'll just say to be more stuff later, but for now, we're us.
the commission does not have an additional person
Okay.
right now, and there will be the spring recruitment where there will be I'll have to check the other terms, but we still have an opening
Okay,
on
so
the
it's still a
historic
vacancy
landmarks. There's still a
opening,
vacancy, and it will be addressed at the spring recruitment.
Okay, there we go.
I think that's what we should share.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's the official news, so we don't.
Nobody loves us?
We don't have, yes. We thought we had one person that loves us in the city, and apparently we don't.
They don't love us anymore.
And
Yeah.
Chair, and Commissioner McClure is just absent today.
Yes, Commissioner McClure still loves us, we think.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so then, all right, so let's work through here then. Let's do it this way. Of those who would like to be on additional or change around, speak up as we get to each piece. Or if you're not able to fulfill that subcommittee, et cetera, obligation anymore, let us know and we can shift around there. Otherwise, we'll just assume that everyone's happy where they are. So let's just go one by one though. So designations,
Happy about it?
Everyone on designations good with it?
I would like to continue on designations as well, if I could.
Okay, great. So it looks like everyone, and Commissioner Drury, you're good with the alternate? Okay, great. And we'll assume Commissioner McClure is as well. So we'll go.
Pardon my interruption. I believe we passed over sign committee. Are we still all right?
Oh,
with,
you're right. Okay, sorry.
Drury and Ensberg.
Bad eyes. All right, so Commissioner Drury, are you still good with sign committee?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ensberg as a alternate? Great. All right, so then ad hoc subcommittees, so objective design standards, it's Grumbine, Uli, and Lenvik. Are we all good with it?
I'm happy with it.
Good, Commissioner Lenvik?
I'm not excited about that.
I said, are you good with it? Not excited.
Sure.
Okay.
And Chair
Dord and
Grumbine,
Commissioner
if I
Dord.
may, so the odds, that particular subcommittee will likely end very soon because it is going to city council for additional review and hopefully adoption here soon.
Okay, great, good to know, and thank you as well, as you all have served for the last couple of years, so. All right, State Street Advisory, we have Commissioner Lenvik and Commissioner Dorden. Dorden is alternate.
Fine.
Why don't you
I have no problem with that. I question the committee will be in existence very long, but I have no problem with that.
okay, great. And then Plaza de la Guerra Design, Commissioner Drury and House as all our representatives, and then Butler, Commissioner Butler for alternate. Oh, House is gone now, so this is the Plaza de la Guerra Design. It's not our subcommittee, it's our appointments to the advisory group, right?
Yeah. We're meeting, I think, on the 19th.
Okay, and so okay, great, so we need an alternate for,
I'll take House's place.
okay, great, thank you, Commissioner Early. All right, State Street Interim Working Group, so that's myself, Commissioner Ensberg, and Commissioner McClure. Everyone still good on those? Okay. All right, and then we don't have an alternate, and maybe we should. That still keeps it, well, actually, maybe we shouldn't, because that would actually put us at 50% potential quorum, because we don't have, or Brown Act issues.
If I may, Chair, I think, given that it's been the three of you as a working group, if that's been working and it hasn't been an issue and your schedules have been accommodated, I think that should suffice for
Okay.
just the three.
Okay.
That is my recommendation.
Okay, great. We'll keep it at that then. All right, any other discussion about subcommittee members? All right, in that case, let's entertain a motion to approve those.
Pardon my interruption. We confirmed from last year's minutes, we do not need to make a motion.
Oh, okay, great.
So we've got it captured on the
So let
record,
it
and we're
be.
all good.
So is it.
All right, great. Thank you all. All right, so now let's go on to item C, public comment. So any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion. So, anyone in the room for public comment?
Chair Grumbine, thank you so much. We do already have 2 speaker slips. First for Rick Clausen, followed by Sherry Ray, and Mr. Clausen had a handout that we'll pass up to you right now.
Great, thank you.
And Mr. Clausen, just make sure the light is on before you speak, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I have more than a handout.
You have a hand up?
Oh, thanks.
Put that so that the camera can show that.
Sure. City TV, if you would zoom in onto the desk here.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
could staff inform us as to what happened at City Council regarding Anapamu Street?
Yes, I will.
No, I was asking staff for that information.
So I think in announcements, we would probably cover that.
That's correct.
So maybe we'll take the Mr. Clausen version of it first, and then we'll get the staff version and any other notes there.
All right.
All right. All right. Thank you, City TV. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you to commissioners. I want to thank you to those who spoke. I want to thank those who wrote. Because we felt that public comment was a big component of the outcome, which you will hear was successful and a successful appeal, which apparently is a rarity. Regarding public comment, those of you that wrote may recognize that that's not available publicly, that goes to the council. And there was one particular piece of public comment that drew some notable attention, and that had to do with Assemblyman Hart's strong letter of support when his recollections from when he was a council member and made that, or was part of that decision to landmark back in 1997. So each of you has a copy of what the Assemblyman sent to the to City Council. The URL, the internet address that is on the screen there goes to our appeal. It starts with my mug talking to the council. And so for those of you that are interested in what was said, we think on your behalf, because it was an issue of history for us, and we very much want to support the endeavors of the Historic Landmarks Commission. It's not an end, though. It was not a goal. It's just the beginning of a collaborative effort to do something about the trees. And I see my counter is running dry there, but I do want to make a point that this has uncovered a secret that's been hiding in plain sight, which is the Santa Barbara Municipal Code does not deal well with cultural landmarks. It deals well with structural, architectural landmarks. And so when you have a cultural landmark that is not a building, it takes some imagination sometimes. And so I think that that probably requires some effort on the part of the architectural historian to begin crafting something that the commission can suggest for municipal codes revisions, maybe a subcommittee even. But we definitely need, I think the community needs a better definition of things that are not structures, but that are culturally important and come under your purview as landmarks. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So for our next public comment.
Next, we have Sherry Ray.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I want to thank each of you for your support of the Italian Stone Pines, the advice that you shared, the comments that you've made, and the knowledge that you hold. And I really do appreciate the time that you put in and your expertise that you provide for the community. I do want to mention about last night's meeting that in the presentations that were offered, the HLC unanimous vote to keep the Stone Pine designation was never mentioned. And I think that's really important, and that the HLC needs to have a voice at matters like this. We're discussing a historic landmark. Santa Barbara is a city of historic significance, but history has to be taught and it has to be seen in context. And we all need to take responsibility for doing that. And I really do want to once again bring up the idea of this that's been floated many times of an Office of Historic Preservation, because right now we don't have a voice, as there wasn't one last night, for speaking for history. We spoke about the trees themselves, but not the historic significance. And I did write an article that was published by Jerry Roberts that gave significant amount of history. And I did hear from at least one council member who said, I never knew any of that. So that's kind of important. And you know, my favorite gal is Pearl Chase, and her thing was coordinate, communicate, and cooperate. And I would hope that we would be able to have a way, if we had such an office, for community members to bring up issues and have them actually addressed so that we could solve some of these problems before they get to the complexity and time-consuming issue of a full appeal at City Council. It seemed like that took way too long and used way too many resources. So again, and and if we had an Office of Historic Preservation, we could also enforce and maintain some of these landmarks that really need attention. So thank you so much for everything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any more speaker slips, and we do not have any virtual participants. We did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll give it back to the commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you to those two public commenters and all their work that they've done. All right, on to item D, approval of minutes of Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of December 18th, 2024.
So moved.
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Drury and Vice Chair Uli. All right, under edits or revisions, any?
Yes, thank you, Chair Grumbine. I have a couple. On item 4, starting number 12, I just would suggest if we could, instead of saying bridge the gap between, for more clarity, between the two neighbors, maybe say design in a way that addresses the small adjacent building at 517 and the large building at 531. There's the small, single-family residence on the one side, and then the large AUD on the other. So instead of bridging the gap, that just sounds a little,
I think that does have the context of what we're going for.
Could you repeat your suggested
okay.
verbiage?
So instead of saying to bridge the gap between the two neighbors, say design in a way that addresses the small adjacent building at 517 and the large building at 531. Chapala Street. And then you could leave the rest, and to relate to both in a sensitive way. That could just stay the same.
That last part that was there.
If that is acceptable. Is that, are
Yeah,
we,
she's
okay,
She's pulling it up. And insert.
okay.
Skills.
I was wondering how you're going to do that. All right. Okay.
And then I also, I was going to suggest that there's in several spots, it's referred, like 3B. I think it would be more clear, even though we all, are friends with and know Mr. Shelton, I think it might be better to refer to it as the 531 Chapala building for people in the future, who may not know. And so that happens at 3B and at 17. And, yeah, so that was that. And then I just have 2 more. Tell me when you're ready.
I think I'm ready.
And then number 18, I was going to suggest that we say consider using tile as opposed to a directive. Consider using tile around the buildings. That's to tie into the neighboring property at 531 Chapala.
All right. I think those all make sense.
And then under item 6, this was a question. This was the 1,200 block planter improvement pilot project. It says discussion held. Did we not vote on it? I thought we did vote on it. Or was it not?
We did make a motion as kind of like a fun last motion for Vice Chair House. We left it out of the official minutes, but if you guys want to commemorate that motion, we can add that back in.
I
What
think
was
it would be good.
What was the motion?
It was to, that you approve of the planter improvements pilot project.
Okay, yeah, let's give Vice Chair House one last. Let him have the last word. It'll be made by House. That's right.
Yeah.
He has nothing else to do now.
The drink in his hand.
Yeah.
Those were all my comments. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Any other edits? All right. So with those edits, let's have a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Commissioner Jordan.
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Abstain.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now we have item E, approval of the minutes of Historic Landmarks Commission consent meeting of December 18th, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. And on to edits. Any edits to these motions? And let's see, it would have been, trying to think, was I the consent calendar? No, it would have been Vice Chair House.
The consent reviewers were Vice Chair House and Commissioner McClure. However, it's expected that the full commission reviews the plans for items on consent so that they can vote on ratifying the motions and the minutes. So anyone who reviewed
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
projects can vote.
Great, all right. But I was just thinking about it in terms of like the edits of it, if there were any. But, okay, but since both aren't here in terms of being able to critique the verbiage, I think that's good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion about it? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Abstain.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On to item F, ratification of action taken at the consent calendar today, January 15th, 2025.
Move to ratify the calendar.
All right, motion by Vice Chair Uli,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Drury. And to staff for,
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Item A was 324 West Figueroa Street, which received final approval as submitted. Item B was 914 Anacapa Street, which received project design approval and final approval as submitted. And item C was 1327 Bath Street, which received project design approval and continued to staff for final approval with the condition that all vinyl windows be replaced with wood windows and the comment that the commission suggests evaluating lighting to be more historic. And that is all for the consent calendar.
all right, thank you. And thank you, Vice Chair Uli, for handling that. All right, any other comments on it before we?
Nope.
go to vote? Okay, great. So let's have a roll call vote for I guess this is, for ratification of the action. Yep. So let's have a roll call vote for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes, but I would abstain from item 2, the 914 Anacapa, because I'm involved with the Trust for Historic Preservation.
Vice Chair Uli,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye, as well as abstaining from item 2 because of the trust, but also because that is the longest architecture project I've ever worked on. It's been 15 years. And some of those hand drawings you saw were mine. Some. But yes, so it's very nice to see it finally moving forward. Yes, exactly.
The applicant did mention that they had been working on it for 15 years.
Yeah, that was one of my first projects
Yeah.
out of school.
Cut
All
your
right.
teeth on it,
Yeah,
didn't you?
exactly. Okay, and those drawings are almost historic now. They're 15 years. We're pushing the 50-year mark. All right, so with that, motion passes, and we can go on to item G. So announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ellen Cokin, I'm the design review supervisor. If it wasn't gleaned from our public comment, the Anapamu trees appeal by Mr. Clausen and Sherry Ray was upheld by City Council. It was a unanimous decision. Councilmember Snedden was not in attendance, but the council unanimously voted in favor of upholding the appeal. As Mr. Clausen mentioned in public comment, that there was a significant amount of public comment, and I think it was really compelling to the council members kind of what the intention was of the original original landmarking status and kind of the aesthetics and kind of what drew people, or what was the kind of the purpose of the trees, not just for themselves, but really the canopy effect and kind of the experience of going down Anapamu. So I think it was, I think I think that there's probably some questions. I'm curious from a internal and perspective of, you know, how we can improve things moving forward. A lot of time. I know that Parks and Rec Commission was, there was a member of Parks and Rec who spoke, and the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and just walked through kind of the thinking behind it and trying to understand what the experience is. And so we should expect that staff will come back to City Council with a resolution with the intention of maintaining the Italian stone pines in place when one is lost, that the replacement would be the Italian stone pine. So just to be clear on that. So I think the resolution will say more. I can't really speak to it beyond what we read and how it's written. And I think we have to be, anytime there's, with any resolution or kind of documentation, it's really helpful to be specific and try to really be explicit about what the intention is, and think about what do you do 50 years from now, or what have you. And yes, there's a lot of conversation that's come up about cultural resources and things that are living, such as trees, or and I know we thought a lot about that for the State Street Parkway when it was designated and how it was discussed at HLC. So yes, I think that there's just going to be some learning lessons from this process, hopefully, and you know, that I'll be advocating for. And I think that ultimately we will see the specifics of the resolution, but it will be the Italian stone pine. And again, I think that in some ways I want to, you know, the Parks Commission was kind of following up on what their jurisdiction was, and same thing with Street Tree Advisory Committee, and like I said, the comments and the presentation by the appellants was very persuasive to the City Council, and I think the mayor said it really well, in that, you know, the expectation is those trees can be really disruptive to the public infrastructure, the sidewalks, the roads, but, you know, it's still what makes Santa Barbara beautiful by having them there, and it's kind of like our mess to deal with, and we know what we're getting ourselves into a little bit. So, you know, that's all I really want to share on that, but thank you.
And then, on the same line, on the same item, myself and Commissioner Ensberg both spoke on as our own individual, just, you know, individual self. So I'll mention on that. I think that to tie into what Ellen was saying, I think one of the things is this is sort of an example of an area where it's not fully fleshed out. And in looking at talking with Ms. Hernandez about how many we have, I mean, we have 7 trees, basically, 7 trees or tree designated landmark things, and this is one of them. I think this is probably the largest and most space shaping, but it brings up the really good question that we haven't wrestled with yet, which is landmark trees which have an age and have a lasting, what wants to happen after that, whether it's replaced with a in-kind or something else. And it's a really good question, but I think it's one that hadn't been really figured out and answered, and we had an ordinance that was putting it clearly in one spot versus another, and also CEQA and all of these other things. So it was a very complex issue, and I think having the letter from Greg Hart was really nice, but it also wasn't what they had originally to begin with, when staff is looking at it from what does the ordinance actually say and why, and trying to figure that out. So I think it is a good lesson for maybe how areas of our improvement as we are going forward and trying to look at some of these things and some of the questions we're going to wrestle with. And if we can make it more clear now, that makes it's a lot easier now than when when things go to appeals and courts and things like that, if we can figure it out on the front end. So I'm very optimistic about how this can continue to help us go forward. So,
Chair,
Yes.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. And I would add to that, echoing public comment, that the broader context are cultural resources. whether it's a tree or a statue or a rock or whatever, that broader context is silent in the rules because we think buildings are the thing. And often there are more non-building resources than there are building resources. So.
Yeah, Commissioner Ansberg?
Yes, I would also add, just it underscores the importance of the voice of HLC, because one of the things that I noticed was that there was no recognition of the design element itself, the composition, that it isn't just about an individual tree or like an individual arch. It's the composition of the whole thing that makes an arcade, or in this case, an LA. So I think that our voice and how we see things is really important, why we're in the room and why we're there to speak to it. And the other part is that, like El Pueblo Viejo, there's trees in El Pueblo Viejo. They're not landmarked necessarily, but they're part of the landmark. So as you say, it's a very complex thing, and it's really important that everyone who has, whether it's transportation or Edison, whoever it is that has something involved in that particular area needs to be at the table to contribute to the discussion so that we end up with something that works for everybody.
Commissioner Lemmick?
Yes, I want to thank the public for jumping in and doing the appeal. Obviously, the Landmarks Commission was not happy with what was happening, but I don't think we have the ability to appeal our own action to City Council. And so the public getting involved there is really important. The other thing that I would like to suggest is that we make ourselves available to Parks and Rec and Public Works as they look for a solution to the problem. I believe that there are solutions to putting the stone pines back in that will keep them healthy, keep the sidewalks relatively safe, so on and so forth. And I think we simply have got to agree that we've got to find a solution to keeping that LAF trees for the long term. And I think we should sit down with those people, with those groups, and offer our suggestions and comments.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if we need to agendize an item for this as a larger discussion or not, but I think that along those lines, I think I'm sure that everyone here will be interested in, and maybe this is maybe part of it was I ran out of time. I said about 10% of what I was trying to say in 2 minutes, and gosh, 2 minutes goes by fast. So it's hard to be on this. It's hard to be on that side of it. It was really hard. I am not used to it, so I ran out of time just saying hi. But one of the points that I was starting to make was we have seen really great success, and I want to commend city and staff and the various from transportation, public works, and others. And I think over the last couple of years, especially, we've gotten better and better at it. And I think we ended the year in December with a really great example of, we're all have very strong goodwill and volunteer spirits to jump in and help out with city cases. And the example of the 1200 block of State Street was a great example of our group having representatives help figure out quick, come back to the whole group, everything go. I mean, it was like less than a month. We had, it was a week. Yeah, and had drawings from a commissioner sketching it out. So I think that proactively getting involved quickly with the departments, I think, is the successful way of the future for the city, and I'm very excited about that. And I think that tough cases like this actually serve the purpose of pointing out also, like, we can all spend a whole bunch of energy and get almost nowhere, or get very, very, very poor results, or we can think smart about it early and kind of get a much better result for everyone's sake. So.
Yes, and pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair, just to kind of keep us on track on the schedule, I would like to assure the Commission and the public that staff is working on preparing a discussion item on cultural
Perfect.
landscapes and biological heritage. So
great.
I
And that
will
could be a
probably
great,
coming
perfect
to
time
you
to,
get
perfect
some,
time to,
some feedback as well.
have
so
that
thank you.
conversation.
I
Yeah.
also forwarded you all a training by the Preservation Institute on cultural landscape, so it might help to
prime the
some
pump.
of their
Yeah.
information to our community.
Yep, great. So we'll have our homework.
And if you do it, you are required to do training, so let me know.
Yeah, sounds good. We can get that box checked. Great. All right, other announcements, et cetera. Future agenda items, appeals. All good? All right. On to item H, subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports from,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Commissioner Drury.
Delegate Art Advisory Committee is going to meet on the 19th of January at noon.
High noon, all right.
That's the Art Advisory Committee or the,
Delegate Plaza.
on the 19th?
Is it a Zoom, or is it somewhere
No, it's going to be, we're going to all get lunch box.
over? Sit on the lawn?
And be merry. All right, other subcommittee, oh, actually, one more announcement. I need to leave at 4:30 today, so I'm gonna, if we're not done, I'll have to hand over Commissioner Uli out of the frying pan into the fire, Vice Chair Uli now. Okay, so,
Yes.
and, sorry, back to subcommittee reports. Any other?
Yes, Chair Grunwein, just very, very quickly on the pilot program, the interim, the pilot project that we were just talking about a minute ago at the 1200 block. Sarah Clark sent us an email giving us an update, and I called her this morning just to check in and see if she had anything else that she would like reported to the commission. And they are now working on, she very much appreciated and stated how great it was that we jumped in like that to help. And that they are now in the process of working with contractors and getting the numbers and, clarifying the scope and the pricing and all that. And they are expecting to start right after the film festival and to be complete in the spring sometime. So soon, very
Right.
soon. And I just also reinforced to her how great it was that, that this was a project that they thought about because of the fact that there's work already happening. So it was a very good opportunity to, spend our money well by combining these two things and doing this little pilot project at the same time. So
Great.
that's,
Thank you, Commissioner Hendrick.
looking forward to that.
All right, great. Any other subcommittee reports? All right, let's go on to we are 7 minutes behind, but we're on to item 1, training for the Secretary of Interior Standards. So, all
Thank
right.
you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Ms. Hernandez.
Happy New Year. I thought we'd started off by brushing up on our standards and processes. And this training is going to go a little bit more into what we do behind the scenes before you see projects come to you. And just as a background, as you know, when buildings are 50 years old or older, they come in for a project, they have to be reviewed for significance. This is not my favorite way of evaluating buildings. I'd rather they be done proactively through a survey so we don't have to surprise owners when they come in for a project. But that's what we have because of CEQA and those requirements. So I will prepare the report, and if it's significant, I'll add it to the inventory and notify the owner. Owners who want to contest it can always hire their own historian and have that report prepared and come to the commission. So our process for review, as you know, we really try to help people meet those standards so they can get this special, wonderful thing called the categorical exemption, which does not require that they do a negative declaration or an EIR. And that is the most streamlined way to get through the process. And to do that, you need to meet those Secretary of Interior standards, as well as our own ordinance that anything on the inventory or designated has to meet the standards. And you have to make these findings that an exterior alteration will be made primarily for and substantially advance restoration of the resource to the original appearance, and the alterations are consistent with the standards. So I'm just going to go run through them real quick because I do make these little memos to everything that does not have a historic structures report that evaluates the project to the standards. It's available for you at the hearing, so if there's something in writing that says it qualifies, if the commission agrees. If you don't agree, you can call for a bigger report. But that's just how our process works so that we can prevent lots of time lapses and money for applicants with relatively minor projects. When it gets to bigger projects or demolitions, they go to consultant reports that need a deeper dive. So if you don't have these, I have these earmarked on my computer because I use them all the time, but this federal government has a excellent Secretary of Interior standards with guidelines that tells you do's and don'ts and avoidance and what to do for each element of a property. They're really great if you are struggling if something meets the standards or not. And this is what I think gets to what staff does. When a project comes in, I evaluate it to the standards. And if it is clearly not meeting the standards, we send them back. We send the design back to be redesigned to meet the standards to create a smoother path forward for the applicant. We can't really put projects in front of the commission that clearly don't meet the standards unless the applicant's ready to go with an EIR. And that's what they want to get. Your denial, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to cause a negative impact. We don't want to charge a lot of money for them to come up in front of you and you just to be like, I can't even make the findings. Why are you here? And then you look at us and say, why'd you let this on the agenda? So that's why most of them go back, and we work with them back and forth to help them meet the standards. And if they have minor alterations with visual impacts on or rear additions, they are forwarded to the commission. So I'm just going to go through real quickly and give you some examples of local projects. So number one, a project will be used as it was historically or the new use with minimal change to distinctive features, materials, spaces, and spatial relationships. We just saw this project where they're converting a commercial building into an apartment building. But you can see in the plans that, and we really focus on the facade, as you all know, so we can have some room for flexibility on the rear, but the facade is the public view. And so you can see they're keeping all the original windows and all the original arches, and they're even restoring the window arches to this middle window and filling in the inappropriate storefront door. And they're not rearranging. They're not saying, this window doesn't work for us. We want to block it up because for whatever we're doing on the inside. So they're working with what we have on the outside, keeping the spatial relationships, the features, and the materials. So it meets the standards. And that one went through like that, right? And that's what our goal is. That one's already done and approved. Here's another example of a streamlined modern. It used to be a car dealership that turned into a restaurant, but they really needed their windows to open so you could get ventilation in there. And so we worked really hard to get these really like tiny, tiny joints in the glazing so it still had that open air or that open facade feeling of the dealership with the rounded corners and the rounded awnings. So it still retained the spatial relationships relating to the street. So number two, the character of the property will be retained. And again, removing distinctive materials and features and spatial relationships will be avoided. This is an example where we sent it back and they redesigned before coming to the commission. This is the original drawing, and it looks, the facade still had that configuration today. What's really significant is that they had a little balcony and this really cool OG detailing here above the door and a simple doorway and portico. They came in wanting classical columns, a big balcony, and doors to the balcony. But this is on the facade. That is removing the original balcony, which is removing distinctive feature, and changing the spatial relationship of the front door, and adding actually like a conjectural feature of a front portico that isn't really of that time and doesn't really express the history of that building and not the intent of the architect. So they redesigned, kept the original front, and did additions and alterations on the rear. This is another more nuanced example that is a little more subtle. This was an application just to remove this chimney. And according to our guidelines on craftsman buildings, the chimneys and these brick chimneys are character defining features of the craftsman. So we sent it to the commission because he really wanted to go to the commission and have their answer no. And they said they could not remove it and could do a faux chimney on the outside of a more streamlined, energy efficient chimneys that was seismically retrofitted. And that is what often happens. They'll just do like a brick veneer over the new chimney. But when they went to do the work, the foundation fell out from under it and the whole thing collapsed, and so they couldn't do it. And so they came back to the commission and asked for the removal. With that, I think you can still make the findings, even though we lost one feature, it wasn't on the facade, and the facade still retains so much of the original materials that it still can convey itself as a historic building and qualify as historic. I think this is the one that talks, the number 3 that talks about don't add false sense of history, adding conjectural features or elements from other properties. So this was a little early 19th century or early 20th century house that, put the metal columns when it used to have wood. And what I hear all the time as a staff member is like, it will look more historic if I put that in, or that my neighbor has it, so I should be able to have it. So we kind of take them back, like the history of this house is different from the history of your neighbor's house. So you can't always, it's conjectural to put false senses of things on their house. And this is just an example. Lots of time, we have lots of these that come in, and usually we can just send them back and talk to them about the standards and how to meet them. Changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right. This property came in for design review last year as well. The house was designed in 1903, but in 1926, Sauter and Lockard, who designed our own city hall, added this porch. And that almost 100-year-old addition has now acquired significance in its own right. It is part of that house and has been for 100 years. So they're retaining and preserving it. This one is one we use a lot. Distinctive materials, features, and finishes will be preserved. And the biggest example we deal with almost every single day is wood windows, how people want to exchange them out for new windows that match, even if they're not deteriorated. Our first goal is to really keep those wood ones in if they are in good shape or can be restored. They're old growth wood. They're much more resistant to termites than the newer woods, and they are the historic feature, so they just have that richness of their age and working with the buildings that new ones just usually cannot completely replicate. This is my example of something that just kills me. This is what they considered like for like change of the windows into the openings, and you can see on such a simple building, those windows were the one thing that really created that beauty and richness and the eyes into the building, and now it created just a really flat little box when they took them out. And this was a little happy story. This guy called me wanting to replace all his windows in this late 1800s building. I went out and all the windows were in perfect condition with the OG lugs, all original on the front and sides. And I said, just talk to a restoration specialist before you go straight to the manufacturer. Most people go straight to a window manufacturer or Home Depot. But if you talk to the restorationist, just talk to them. See how much they cost, because usually they're comparable, and see what they can do. And he sent me this great email back saying he now appreciates how valuable these are and how functional they are. And they're in good shape, and he's going to keep them, and he was excited about it. He just got the flip, and it just takes that. I wish all my conversations were that smooth. But and this one, we had this example on consent today, but I think it's the perfect example of when you do have to replace a missing feature, you substantiate it with physical evidence, and this one was substantiated. They have a picture of what it looked like, so they knew exactly how they could restore it back to that, rather than just guessing what it looked like, which would have been more of a conjecture. And also, I just wanted to mention back here on deteriorated features that do have to be replaced, and they do propose a different material, those go to consent. I do not sign off on change of materials. That would be more of your decision. The ordinance, when we did it back in 2021, made it really clear. I only sign off on things that have no visual impact and really are more restorations, pure restorations, and anything veering from that goes to you. Chemical treatments that are, we always want the gentlest means. I think the biggest example is never sandblast brick. You know, that was like number one in preservation school because it so damages the brick. You want something really gentle to peel off paint or do other cleaning. And for this, you can always go to the preservation briefs from the National Park Service. They have over 40 of them that tell you how to restore each element of a building. And we have our own in our guidelines. You can always refer back to these. They tell you how the best practices for each section of a building: wood, windows, porches, landscaping. And I think we'll probably need a whole section on trees, but that's a little more complicated. But we do have some really good resources for you to look up when you're reviewing a property, then you might have some questions. Our archaeological is done through a separate reports, and this is the one you use most often in your reviews as a full board when people want new additions or exterior alterations. They're not destroying any materials, features, or spatial relationships, and it is compatible with the building. And I think this is our perfect example that this building was a little craftsman building that came in when the project was proposed, put on the inventory, and they worked with the HLC to do the second-story addition while keeping the appearance on the front of a one-story craftsman. They got the room they needed in the back. And our guidelines also really go deep into talking about how to do rear additions, especially second-story ones that are compatible. And this little section here was all drawn by Commissioner Mahan when he was on the board. And then we even have, just as a refresher, guidelines on how to do accessory dwelling units, too, to be compatible, although not many of those are under our review anymore, but they're there for guidance for people. And the last one is new additions or are taken in a manner that they can be removed in the future. So, like, if you blocked off that second-story addition, you'd still have the essence and form of the one-story building, and also we have guidelines on how to construct next to historic resources, and I often provide these to the ABR and SFDB when they are looking at projects next to historic resources to give them some guidance so they can adequately review and make their findings, which they also have to make findings that they're compatible with historic resources. So that is your quick overview of the Secretary of Interior standards to start your year off, 2025, just in case you forgot. But yes, just so you know, that's why those memos are always attached, so you have a document in hand that says why we have given it a CEQA exemption. That
Great.
concludes it.
Well, thank you very much. Do we need to have a public comment for this? Okay. All right, let's go to public comment. Anyone want to comment on our Secretary of Interior standards training? I see some historians in the room. All right. Anyone online?
Thank you, Chair.
question.
Okay, let's wrap up public comment real quick, and then we'll jump back to us.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Having no speaker slips, no virtual participants, and we did not receive written correspondence, so I'll turn it back to you.
All right, great. And now Commissioner Lenvik, question.
Yeah, thank you. We talked earlier, or I mentioned earlier about the fact that Santa Barbara's ordinance does not deal with cultural landmarks. But the Secretary of Interior standards do. And aren't we, to a large degree, governed by the Secretary of Interior standards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we address them in our historic resources element, and we treat them because they're designated, but we just don't have great guidelines. And the Secretary of Interior has a section on cultural landscapes, and I can send it to you, and you can read it. I find it's not as specific as sometimes I'm looking for the answer in that document on our trees, and I can't find it. It seems a little to me like they're more addressing things like if you're a big battlefield or a farm. It doesn't quite focus in as much as I've found it applicable, but you're supposed to still meet the Secretary of Interior standards for a lot of, as you mentioned, it's a complicated CEQA issue, but when a tree falls or dies and there's a building and safety hazard, they get the CEQA exemption.
Unless no one's there to hear it. No. Sorry, too soon. One of the additional points along that was coming out in the discussions and also in court cases that were being referenced and all these other things was it is a blurry, unclear case of how exactly CEQA would be met with all these things without negative declaration, with all these other things, and there was a lot of discussion about it, but it probably would have been something that it wouldn't get fleshed out until on a particular case it was fleshed out in court or whatever and went down a long path. So it's a very blurry area, and which is also why it'd be nice to add clarity to it on the front end of most of those things. In most examples, if a tree gets, usually it's always been up until now, it's been a tree gets sick, we find out about it, it's either going to be removed or already gets damaged or it falls over or whatever, and it's gone, and we're just recognizing the fact that it's no longer a landmark. So so it isn't as easy as or as hard as what this case was. So anyways, it brought to light the fact that it is blurry in this region and exactly how those all play out, and it'd be better to get clarity earlier on. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
We have.
yes, Commissioner, Vice Chair Uli.
I'm getting a sense that between the lines of Commissioner Lindvik's question seems to be that if we say in our rules that we comply to the standards, and our rules are silent on some issues of the standards, is it implied that those standards are part of our rules? And I would say probably not. We don't codify them all, even though we say we use the standard as our gauge for environmental reasons and others. And our specific rules don't deal with cultural resources as a broad context.
Right, we just say structures of merit or landmarks, so we don't say which kind. We don't say it's a cultural resource, a tree, or a house, or a
So
stone
one
wall.
might say it's implied that because we adopt the standards and apply them, that then that means that our rules also, but it's not that close, which is why we need clarity.
Yeah, I think we need to work on how to make that clarity. And it's not my specialty, so I struggle with it as well, because I was only trained in architecture, and we can all work.
And it's also an area of the field that is developing, right? Yeah. So we're also on the early end of preservation as a reality, right?
Right.
So.
And the reality of, you do have findings that you can make when there's something damaged by nature. And that, if a historic resource is damaged by nature, like a fire or an earthquake or a flood or whatever, you can say we no longer landmark it because it was damaged by those reasons.
Or a chainsaw. Yeah. Okay.
Chair Grumbine?
All right.
Yeah,
Commissioner
thank you.
Ginsburg.
Is this something then, I think that certainly in Europe, they are very clear about this. There's so many cultural landscapes that we could name off. But here, we seem to be needing more information. How do we communicate that? And is there a way that we can reach out and express this concern or share what we are experiencing to get more clarity about it? I'm thinking like the Sunken Gardens, for example, or like Lotus Land, or like the Bird Refuge, or so many things that we have that are of this nature, particularly in Santa Barbara and I think throughout California. Is there a way we can address that and be proactive?
So, pardon
Just
my
ask,
interruption, Mr. Chair. That is all going to be covered in the discussion item that staff is planning for the cultural landscape. So I don't want to get too into that discussion now, because that is going to be agendized in a future discussion, but that is going to be one of the challenges and one of the things that we'll talk about. Nicole can correct me if I'm mistaken, but in what I've read from the Secretary of the Interior Standards that talks about cultural landscapes, it's not the same as wood windows need to be replaced with wood windows, clay tile needs to be replaced with clay tile, it's a little more vague. It's talking more about like the canopy instead of, the tree needs to be replaced like for like. And so now we're running into these issues because those standards, aren't specific enough for us to deal with a situation like the Italian stone pines. So that's all I'll say on that for right now. I'll provide
It'll
more
be-
information
yeah,
and we'll
to be continued.
We'll get into the nitty gritty. I know you guys are raring to do it, and I promise I'll give you that opportunity.
I think that national training, I haven't taken it, but I think Heidi and I will try and watch it as well, and we can all see what's going on a national basis and maybe bring it home so we
Yeah.
can create some supplemental document or at least a new chapter in our guidelines or something like that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Might be a quicker path than an ordinance.
Yeah, sounds
But
good.
anyway, that's good.
All right, great, thank you.
I did want to follow up with one more thing in relation to your evaluations to the Secretary of Interior Standards. Next week, you will see we are going to post the drafts of the new Master Environmental Assessment documents that we have been updating. It's really exciting. They haven't been updated since 2002, and we're putting them ahead. We're going to post them next week so you can read them way before because we're not going to do the hearing until the 12th. So you have a long time to read these riveting documents.
4,000-page document.
Right, but it's just a lot. The archaeological one, we received a grant to actually revise to really make sure they address a lot of the tribal resources and things like that. And the historic ones are more just streamlining and codifying like the format with the new ordinances and laws that have happened. And so keep your eye out.
Yep,
I will
stay
send that
tuned.
to you. We're going to send all the consultants that as well. So that's our main audience in that matter. So
Great.
Mr. Chair?
keep your eye out for that.
It was mentioned that it would be brought to us on the 12th. The 12th of what?
Oh, sorry, February. So 4 weeks
2028.
from now, 4 weeks from now, it's going to post next week.
All right.
So a long time.
Okay.
So that's in relation to our review to the standards. Thanks.
Great. Thank you again. All right, so now let's go on to item 2, which is structure of merit designation for 18 Calle Alamo. So we had our historic significance report, and this is a request to adopt resolution 2025-1, the first one, designating the Spanish colonial revival style residence designed by noted architects Edwards, Plunkett, and Howell in 1927, a historic structure of merit. All right, so to Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. That's a great way to start off the new year with an Edwards and Plunkett and Howell building. This one's just really lovely up in the San Roque neighborhood, again, constructed in 1927, Spanish colonial revival by Edwards, Plunkett, and Howell. I think this is a great picture because you can see the way they designed this double-pointed chimney, these beautiful vents in the break of the roof line, the beautiful arch over the front porch, different varieties of windows. It's a really incredible example of their work. The house sits on this little triangular lot, like near San Roque and Calle Alamo, kind of off of State Street as you come around this corner. And we have the original drawings that illustrate that it still retains its historic integrity. It even has the rounded driveway with the weather vane still, the same pattern of window, the arch, the chimney. And it still has these terracotta ridge lines over the wood shake window or roof that was specified out in the drawings. And I know it's a little blurry, but this really gives you an idea of how the volumes kind of undulate as as Edwards and Plunkett and Howell were so good at doing and creating that Spanish colonial revival diversity amongst the volume of the building. The building, as I said, is in San Roque. San Roque was originally the ranch of Dixie Thompson, who raised beans and walnuts on the ranch, and then sold it around World War II when Stephen Rutherford bought 123 acres. And as per the Sanborn map, there was about, on this side of the San Roque Street, about 112 buildings built between the two wars, between World War I and 1930, actually, on the 1930 Sanborn map. And the rest, then we had a pause for the World War II, and the rest was sort of filled in the 50s and 60s. And this building does retain its integrity, as I discussed earlier, so it can convey its original appearance. Really like this photograph because it shows the way the front door actually arches with the arch at the top, which I think is a wonderful detail, and it mimics that arch in the chimney that we saw. So this building meets criterion 3 for being a Spanish colonial revival style building designed by Edwards, Plunkett, and Howell. And some of the character defining features specific to this building, again, are that the roof that has a combination of low-pitched, hipped, and gable roofs covered in shake tiles with terracotta ridge tiles, which is pretty unique for Santa Barbara. Of course, the smooth stucco walls, punctured by carefully placed use of openings. The chimneys, which are not only tower-like, but have decorative openings, and that's that double arch chimney that we saw. The wood plank front door with a small little window in it and the pointed arch that sits under the massive entry arch, as well as the wood windows, the wood triptych window with the fixed pane and the casement windows on either side with the horizontally divided lights are so characteristic of this style, as well as, I think I skipped, I thought I had, I missed it, that I didn't put a picture in, but that arch in the driveway, in the garage door is still there as well as the weather vane. And of course, the building is designed by Edwards, Plunkett, and Howell, who designed our own beloved Arlington Theater and the Shower Printing Building, which just got a huge rehab and now is a very beautiful hair salon, by the way. And the Santa Barbara Auto Club, as well as our own bathhouse. And on our website, I keep little bios of each architect, and I add to the list of buildings that they have done in Santa Barbara as I come across them when they come into my review. And this one has so many, and it keeps adding and adding as people come to me. Like, I have an Edwards and Plunkett. It's really fabulous. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'll leave it to the commission.
Great, thank you. All right, well, let's go to public comment now. Anyone in the room wishing to comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I don't have any current speaker slips and don't see any movement to have one. We did not receive any written correspondence, and we do not have any virtual participants, so I'll give it back to the commission.
All right, to
I
the
think
commission.
the owner's here, though, and if he wants.
Oh, yes.
You want to say a few words?
The owner, like,
Thank you very much for doing all this. And thank you very much, Nicole, for putting
oh, yeah,
all this.
can you push the, green, there we go.
Turn it off. How about now? Is that
Maybe
better?
yours too tall. You got
Yeah,
it.
there you go. But no, first of all, just thank you, Nicole, for working on this with us. We really appreciate it. It meant a lot. We feel very fortunate to be able to live in a historic house in Santa Barbara. I think that, Santa Barbara is so rich with its history and historic homes, and this home embodies the architecture and cultural evolution in this area. By living in one of these homes, you feel directly connected to the city in such a way that the history behind it is somewhat, you see it every day, and it just makes you feel so much better that you're part of the city, so to speak. Edwards and Plunkett, as she mentioned, have built a ton they did the airport as well. They've built a ton of homes in Santa Barbara, particularly meaningful for several reasons, primarily stemming from their unique architectural style and historical significance. We love this house and its history. We hope it can be designated as a historical home and we can take care of it for future generations to enjoy. And thank you very much for your consideration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now to the commission for comments, questions.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair.
While I might differ slightly that it's an excellent example of that firm's work, it actually, in my opinion, actually is not. I mean, they're better examples. I think what makes this house unique are the variety and kind of almost salad bar offerings of architectural details that you don't see on a lot of other buildings. Some of them were mentioned. A wood roof with clay tile trim on it. the round events that are in a horizontal raked line versus a group of 3 or 4 or whatever, very unique. And when you look at the roof view of the house, there's almost every element of roof configuration. So there's a gable, there's a hip, there's a Dutch hip, there's a partial this and a partial that. And so I think all of those elements make it really unique and worthy to be listed as a structure of merit.
All right, other comments and thoughts? Commissioner Ensberg?
To me, this is just, it's just what it's all about, as far as I'm concerned. It's just, when you're in a building like that, whether it's the home or whether it's the courthouse, there is just, it's undescribable. It's just something how it affects your soul. And it's what it's all about, and it's what this commission is all about, is the protection and the recognition of how special the craftsmanship of the workers who, not only the designer, but all the trades who were necessary to create and make this happen. So I appreciate the owner, and thank you so much for recognizing how important it is. It's pretty easy when you're in there, right? It's just, it's a spiritual thing. So I just am delighted to see this. It makes me so happy, and appreciate it.
Mr.
All right,
Chair.
Commissioner Dre?
Is it too late? Too late. It's too late for a lot of people. Is it too early for a motion?
I go for it. I think we're
Let's
there.
see, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-1, designated as Spanish colonial revival style residence designed by noted architects Edward Plunkett and Howell, 1927, a historic structure of merit, 18 Kyle Alamo.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
It's a very nice way to start 2025.
Yes, here. All right, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Vice Chair Uli,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Commissioner
Oh.
Ensberg.
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you.
All right, aye. All right. Okay, wonderful. So, let's see, so should I? Yeah, sounds good. All right. So if you would come forward, we've got a resolution of designation as a structure of merit here.
It's part of our process reduction timeframe.
All right, so, resolution of designation as a structure of merit. On January 15th, 2025, the Historic Landmarks Commission officially designated 18 Calle Alamo a historic structure of merit based on its architectural and historical importance to the heritage of the city of Santa Barbara. The building is an important contribution to the beauty of our community. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right. That is a good way to start the year. All right, so
Do it again.
let's do it again, round 2. All right, this is item number 3, a structure of merit designation for 234 Cannon Drive. This is a request to adopt Resolution 2025-2, designating the American Colonial Revival style residence constructed in 1934, a historic structure of merit. All right, so with that, Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This house, as you said, was constructed in 1934 in the American colonial style with some regional interpretations that are rather unique, that make it a unique example, designed by J.H. Hillcock and Sons. This is also up in the San Roque neighborhood, but on the other side of San Roque Road, around Cannon Drive. And Cannon Drive was had a sprinkling of buildings on the 1930 Sanborn map, including this, not this one yet because it was 1934, but some of the other buildings on that drive are designated. We have 4 other designated buildings on that drive. We even have another Edwards and Plunkett on Cannon Drive. And it's nice to recognize those early developments on that. This one section around Cannon Drive was actually part of the San Roque Country Club, which was a planned development of homes around the drive with a golf course where Ralph Stevens Park is now. The subdivision maps show the layout of the streets, at least one which never materialized, and the homes were required to meet construction design standards established by the San Roque Investment Company. A San Roque art jury governed all the color schemes. And this is a picture of the original sketch of the building that illustrates that there not much has changed since the original design. It included the brick on the first floor, the grill on either side of the house, which is faded in this photo, but it's clearer on the drawing, as well as the balcony, and the wood siding on the top, and the two chimneys framing either side of the house. So you can see the house really does retain the required historic integrity of location, setting, materials, design, workmanship, and feeling on the facade to convey its original 1934 appearance. Sometimes this gets too far from me. In addition, the building does meet criterion 3 for being an example of an American colonial revival style house. So, as you know, the American colonial style was really popular in the United States starting at the Centennial in the late 1800s, and we don't see as many of them in Santa Barbara because we were much more in love with the Spanish colonial revival at the time and this craftsman. But we do have a handful of them, and many of them are designated, and it does really contribute to Santa Barbara's architectural repertoire and shows some of the important trends of the time. This one's really unique because it does have that asymmetrical massing, whereas more of the traditional colonial revival, American colonial revivals were completely symmetrical with the front door right in the center. But this does have other elements of the style that include the simple two-story rectangular massing with the side gable roof with a chimney on each end, and the front door entrance being the little 6 panels over the elongated vertical panels, and the really distinguishing 6/6 double-hung wood windows you see in this photo that really reflect the American colonial revival style, which tried to look back at the American colonial period when panes of glass were small and not common, so they had to be really tiny rather than the larger 1/1s that we saw like in the late Victorian era. Being that this is such a unique example, it does qualify for criterion 3. It also qualifies under criterion 5 as it sits on Cannon Drive and has a unique decorative balcony and unique example of the style. It's highly visible feature in San Roque neighborhood. Thus, it qualifies as a unique singular characteristic that makes it highly visible, an established and familiar feature of the San Roque neighborhood. And that concludes my presentation, and the owner here is here for this one as well.
All right, great. So why don't we start with the owner then, coming forward for public comment. Welcome.
Hi.
And I don't know if the green
still
light's
on.
on. Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't have prepared remarks like my neighbor down the street. But yeah, thanks, Nicole, again, for putting that report together. We take great pride in this house. We moved in a few years ago and are raising our young kids there. And I have always just been really drawn to all the architecture here in Santa Barbara and how special it is. We owned a 1924 house in the Upper East before this one. And it is iconic in the neighborhood, I would say, and we take great pride in that. You can see it the second you turn on Cannon Drive. And so it means a lot to us to be able to be stewards of this really important house. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's just, yeah, Nicole put it all out there, so yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have any more speaker slips, and we don't have any virtual participants, and no written correspondence. So back to the commission.
All right, great. All right, to the commission for any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Drury.
That shed roof extension, which it seems to be a little bit out of place, it's lovely, but is that normal for, I guess I'm asking Mr. Hernandez, is that normal for that kind of architecture?
Well, it's in the original drawing.
Yeah.
It's unusual. That's
Yeah,
why I was like,
yeah.
it's a very unique example, but it is in that, you can see it. Oh, where'd it go?
Yeah, it doesn't disrupt anything, it's just kind of
It is unusual. Yeah, I thought, when I first saw it, I thought it might be addition, but it's right there on the drawing. So it was the intent of the architect. I think he did veer away from that strict American colonial revival style, which makes it more unique.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, let's give one
I have
quick chance
one-
for any comments.
One quick comment. This town is very well known, especially to visitors, for the Spanish colonial revival. But the richness and diversity of the domestic architecture of this town is noteworthy and is one indication of a level of architectural sophistication that's part of the heritage of this town.
That's a good point. Yeah. We get American colonial revivals that even have shed roofs.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called poetry.
Yeah, exactly. All right, any other thing? And then, okay, Commissioner Lenvick, you want to make the motion?
I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-2, designating the home at 234 Cannon Drive, which is an American colonial revival style residence constructed in 1934 as a structure of merit.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second under discussion. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Lenvick,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Uli,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, congratulations, if you want to come on up. All right, so this is a resolution of designation as a structure of merit. On January 15th, 2025, the Historic Landmarks Commission officially designated 18 Calle Alamo. Oh. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Sorry, let me get this. 234 Cannon. We'll have a temporary. Yeah, Cannon. You can swap it out later. All right. All right, yes. So officially designate 234 Cannon Drive, a historic structure of merit based on its architectural and historical importance to the heritage of the city of Santa Barbara. The building is an important contribution to the beauty of our community. So thank you very much, and in the meantime.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right. All right.
Mr. Chair, it's really, as Commissioner Ensberg said, it's really rewarding to see people who really want to preserve what we have in Santa Barbara. We're so unique, and it's so easy to lose what we have, very easy to lose it. So we've got to be vigilant and always on top of what's happening. Thank you.
That's great.
Totally agree with that, because we lose it one tree at a time or one window at a time.
Yep, that's true. All right, could we? I agree, unless we make them rebuild the back. Can we take a 5-minute break real quick, and then we'll come back to item 4, 20 East De La Guerra. All right? back to order. Historic Landmarks Commission, 2025. All right. So this next item is item 420 East De La Guerra Street. It's De La Guerra Plaza. This is a historic structures report. And they're requesting acceptance of a Phase 2 historic structure sites report and cultural landscape. Actually, I'll read the first part just to get us context. Located in EPV and listed in the city's historic resources inventory, the De La Guerra Plaza Revitalization Project proposes to raise the entire plaza as well as De La Guerra Street between Anacapa Street and State Street to be a level with the existing sidewalk and install new landscaping, water feature, restrooms, pavilion, stage, art nodes, lighting, and trash and recycling. The 2011 Historic Structure Site Report accepted by HLC found that De La Guerra Plaza is eligible for designation as the City of Santa Barbara Historic Landmark, listing it in the California Register of Historical Resources and National Register of Historic Places. Surrounding De La Guerra Plaza are City Hall and California Pepper Tree, the News Press Building, Casa de la Guerra, and El Paseo, all designated city landmarks, and the La Placida Building, aka McKay Bothan Building, that is designated structure of merit. This is requesting acceptance of a Phase 2 historic structure sites report and cultural landscape study prepared by Post Hazeltine. The report concluded the proposed project meets the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, provided the guidance in the report is implemented. And we had our Phase 2 historic structure sites report. So, welcome. If you would introduce yourselves for the record, and then do we have any staff comments before we roll into it with the historians?
I do not believe we have any staff comments, but we do have it's not really pertinent to this review, but just if at any point you want to review the minutes from the last concept review, those are available.
Yeah, okay, I think that would be good also just to, it's been a while.
Do you want to review them
and
now
then-
before we get into the?
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's do that. We'll review the minute, introduce yourselves, we'll review the minutes, and then we'll come to you, back to you.
Pamela Post of Post Hazeltine Associates.
Let me raise a point here. The minutes that we're talking about, the last review, were done before there was a draft or a final report, correct? So
I
the
believe that would be a
information,
question
the information that we saw and acted on in 2023 was before we got all this good stuff here.
We had a draft.
We had a phase one. We had a phase one.
It was in draft. Where was it the last time we saw this? A draft of this report, or was it?
Well, if I may interrupt.
Yeah.
Sir, there was a 2008, the Phase 1, which established whether the plaza was historically significant and why. And that was followed up. There have been actually several drafts of this report, and we have prepared some memos that have been reviewed by HLC over the last, I hate to say since 2008, but that's the truth. And so this is.
And the most recent time we.
I believe this is the first, even I'll be honest, my memory is getting fuzzy because we've been here more than seven or eight times over the last 10 years or more. So with this, but I can tell you what this report does do is it does, the Parks Department, the architect, received the comments from HLC at the last concept review, and that this report addresses or evaluates the revised project plans that were meant to address those comments, both from HLC and from other stakeholders in the community. I just wanted to note that architect is not here today, so generally we try not to delve too deep into design whys and wheres and hows, because that's really not our area, so we're kind of lacking that component today, but we'll do our best to address it from our end.
Okay. All right, and you are?
I'm Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates.
All right.
And I'm Brad Hess, Principal Project Manager with the city.
All right, great. All right, so, and also just additional clarity, we'll review the motion from last time, which was reviewing the design of the architectural design, right? Not the historic structures report. We're now reviewing the historic structures report, which also includes maybe some of this. So, all right, so let's just go through it just so we have it or said out loud. All right, so the motion was continue indefinitely with the following comments. The commission thanks the applicant for a well laid out and thoughtful presentation with beautiful renderings and appreciates all the work that has been put into the project. Number 2, in general, the palette of paving materials and patterns are going in the right direction, but the commission suggests simplifying the number of paving materials used. Study the connection to Costa de la Guerra and the dark and light contrasts. 3, provide a plaque and flag treatment plan with a special consideration to the plaque on the boulder in front of the Costa de la Guerra. Ensure that there is enough space for large flag ceremonies. 4, in general, the design in front of City Hall and the side with the hitching post is favorable. Study attaching wrought iron gates to the sandstone piers at the entrance. Study adding rings on some of the hitching posts in the parking next to the City Hall. 5, in general, the commission supports the landscape palette. 6, provide a delivery access plan. And the motion was by Uli, the second was by Dordan. It was 9-0-0. Motion carried. And that was what date? August 2nd, 2023. Okay.
And pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair. I guess staff does have a brief announcement. The commission's purview today, or the commission's task today with this, is to review the historic structures report, the phase 2, not the project. However, to Commissioner Lenvick's point, the applicant and the historian can probably speak to what changes have occurred to the project plans since your last review, because you are, determining whether or not the phase 2, if you agree with the conclusions of the phase 2, and that relates to the concept of the plan. So, with that, I will turn it back over to the applicant.
All right. So with that, why don't you walk us through, and especially focusing on any overview you want to give us, and then also everything that's changed and your reasoning for argumentation. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to just do a quick intro. So you've met the team, but just to reiterate, I'll do my best to answer all the questions that you guys have with respect to design changes and those kinds of things, but I may not be perfect, but we'll do what we can on that. Second thing is, I was here on November 20th, and I just want to apologize to you guys. I called you the committee, not the commission. So for the record, I just was so out of practice, I lost it for a second, but I just want to apologize.
All right,
I know.
Now we're going to revenge.
Probably call us a lot of things, but that in private.
Fair enough.
Very nice for you to
But
point
for
that
the
out.
record, but for the record. And then the third thing is I just wanted to bring you up to speed on where the project just in general is, because it's been a while. So our application actually got submitted and then was deemed complete July 26th of last year. And then subsequent to that, the decision was made to do an EIR rather than go the MND route. So that's where we are right now, is that we're in the middle of the EIR process and in producing that document. We expect that will go through the review and the adoption by late summer. We're not really sure of the date. And Kathy and I were talking about this, we're fairly certain that it's going to be City Council that will do the review and adoption of that document. It will be at that time that we come back to you for design review, for project design approval and that process. So today, our hope is that we're focusing on the historic structures report with the understanding that we will be back in hopefully not too soon to begin talking about the actual design. So,
Not too soon?
I mean, too soon. Not too soon? Not
Be a
soon
long time
enough.
from now.
Not soon enough. I'm sorry, misspoke.
Before the committee?
Yes, before. And with that, I'll actually turn it over to Tim and Pam. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I actually propose to highlight the report, the first part of the report, which actually it basically reviews the phase 1 because it's been so long, includes a lot of information that you're probably already familiar with. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time on what we already know. But I'm going to cursor to this page here. This is page 3, and it actually has color-coded the historic buildings and the street grid. This is sort of informative because these are the structures that, potentially could have some sort of impact from the proposed project. That doesn't mean a direct impact, like an actual physical alteration, but impacts can also be to setting, which actually sort of ties into the earlier discussion about the cultural landscape. So it's an issue where we're trying to, in the report, we were evaluating, well, how will this project, of course, directly affect the plaza, but also the surrounding buildings? Will it still be able to convey what makes them historically, architecturally, and culturally significant? So I just wanted to show you that. Then there's like lists of This is from the previous report, updated of the various historic and designated buildings adjacent to the plaza or in the plaza or the city property. So I won't bore everyone with these. There's a great number, as you can tell, and it's well delineated in the report. So, sorry, this is a little unwieldy. Here's the De La Guerra Plaza, part of the parcel that's going to be directly affected. This should have been, there's one thing here is the historic Placida is also part of this project, the revamping of that. But that's not technically part of De La Guerra Plaza from a historical standpoint. And this just shows the location of City Hall, various historic buildings, some of them. And we've got lots and lots of, or many photos, I should say. So this is the current state of the building. Well, this was taken a few months ago, but this is essentially what the plaza looks like today, looking west towards State Street. And you can see City Hall in the lower right corner, the roof, with a sort of faux, it's not quite a mansard, but it's trying to be a mansard, faux mansard. That is an original feature. Here's another view from above the News Press building. Kind of gives you a really good idea of the configuration of this particular property. The U-shaped configuration dates to approximately around 1924. Before that, as is detailed in the report, the center of the plaza was encompassed by the combination City Hall, Fire Department, and City Jail. That building was demolished and replaced by the current City Hall, and that reopened the plaza, which had actually been encumbered by this building from about 1874 to 1924. So the open part of the plaza has existed essentially since 1924. What has changed here is, well, several things have changed, but one is the landscaping. The other is the configuration of the grass area. Originally in the early 20s, after it's completed, the end here closest, the sort of U-shaped end closest to the News Press building was more flat, was just more of a very, almost a linear, and then this was altered. And this here is looking down De La Guerra Street towards State Street, and you can see City Hall on the left with the existing landscaping, which is a hedge, succulents, several trees, and a pathway. This does in part date between the 1920s and essentially the 1970s with some re-landscaping and replacement of paving materials. There's no, and let me just cursor through this. I'm trying to bring up some historical images to give you a framework. So this is the plaza in 1854. As you can see, at that time, it was really defined by residential buildings, and it was dirt. And also, it's not clear here, but the street grid actually had not been put through, and if you notice some of the adobes, which are colored purple, their footprints are in the streets, parts of the buildings. So this was sort of, it's not a hypothetical, but these streets did not exist as they're shown on the map, but that was the intention. And here in the center, you can see a 3 near the center of the image, and that is the City Hall, jail, and fire department building. I hope I don't give anyone a vertigo on this. Apologies for that. Okay. And of course, we all know it's in the EPV. And so, I'm trying to get to the, yeah, lots of history.
That's the problem with the 345-page report.
Apologies, actually. If we could get them into 20 pages, we'd love it. Let's try and get to the actual project plans here. There we go. Let me just pull these up. These are existing conditions, some of which are in the report. These are existing landscaping, hardscape features. And now let's get to the first. This is just an existing survey. This is, let me just pull this up. There we go. That essentially is the proposal. Whoops.
Just went by us.
That was the proposal.
In more way, yeah, it's over, yeah. Come on. You're being a little stubborn here. Ooh. Yeah, they're so slow. It sounds like it gets so big, they're very slow. We could use this one. Every time I take, yeah, but it would weigh 5 pounds, so I don't know if it's a plus or not. Yeah, I'm gonna take my finger. Let's,
Yeah, let it catch up.
Stop.
Let it
Yeah,
catch
it's
up.
gotta compile. Let
Okay.
the pages compile.
let's see. Well. Should I just stop it now?
Stay there.
It'll stop.
Yeah, there we go. Well, this is not really the best image, but let's see.
It caught up.
Go slow.
No, there's that one. I think I'm going to have to go back. Apologies on this.
Where are the donuts?
There we go. That would come after construction, sorry to speak over the chair. Okay, here's the footprint and sort of the layout. So the proposal is, as we all know, to pedestrianize that block of East De La Guerra Street, except for the east end of the block, which would still have some parking. There'd be bollards to close off the street, but it would also allow access. My understanding, and Brad can correct me, is that also would provide access to the rear of the commercial properties that are on the west side of the plaza. And I think really the focus is, okay, what are we removing that's old? What would be removed is the existing slightly raised turfed area and the existing paving, which is a mixture of asphalt and concrete. Some of the concrete does date to 1924. Most of the curbing, but not all of it, dates to the 20s. Some of it was altered. The east side of the plaza, the roadway there was reconfigured a couple of times. Part of that took place in the 40s when the remnants of the Abadi Harmer adobe were demolished. And then that area was transformed by the city into a parking lot. So what we would see here is a pedestrianized center area with a variety of paving types. One of the goals, from my understanding, is to link the courtyard of the De La Guerra house to the plaza, which was its historic condition before the street grid was implemented beginning in the 1880s. There are a number of different paving materials. You also can see, and it's a little difficult, but there are circular footprints along the east and west side, mostly on the west side of the plaza. Those would be slightly raised planters. The existing flagpole and memorial stone would be removed to the Anacapa facade of City Hall. There would be a restroom building, which has been discussed before, in historic Placita. So all the loss of existing materials dating to the 20s would be the curbing, the grass, and the paving, both for a roadway around the plaza as well as the sidewalks. And then that would be replaced with a essentially level surface. Some of the proposed improvements, I'll use that word, is a water feature that could be used. It'd be basically flush with the ground surface, and could be activated for children as a sort of play area. There's a pavilion planned for the proximate location of the Abadi Harmer adobe, and that's in the sort of upper right corner of the plaza. This building would have a sort of Mediterranean Spanish Revival design with plastered walls, roofs covered in terracotta tile, and a stage area facing towards the plaza. That's sort of in a nutshell just the major components. And of course, here you can see there are three different paving types, or maybe 4 in one area. It was our suggestion also that the paving types be kept as minimal as possible in terms of their number. We're broadly supportive of the project in the sense that we believe that what really makes De La Guerra Plaza historic is the form of the plaza. It's urban form. It's this large rectangle that is surrounded by structures. Originally, they were all homes, and later, as into the late 19th century and early 20th century, buildings such as the new News Press building and City Hall were built, and some buildings were demolished, but between where there is City Hall now and the News Press building, there was a whole line of smaller structures. Some were wood frame, there was the adobe, and they created the sense of enclosure that sort of made it readily identifiable as a plaza, because there were buildings on all four sides. And that's one of the reasons we are supportive of having a pavilion in this area, is really to recreate as much as feasible that sense of enclosure, which actually helps identify the resource as a plaza. We don't feel that the loss of the grass and the paving and the curbing is significant, because we believe what makes the plaza historic is its form, as I mentioned earlier. It's the form, it's the civic center. And it's a civic center that has never really stayed in one sort of form since 1854. It has undergone many transitions. If we could go back to 1880, there'd be, as we noted, a large 2.5, 3-story building at the center of the plaza. So I think part of the history of the plaza is the fact that it does change, and it's changed to meet different requirements and different needs of the community at various times in the city's history. So we're broadly supportive of this proposal. We do realize that some materials dating to 1924 are being removed. We feel that after the project is implemented, if it was, in something close to this form, that it would still be a historic resource. It's still the city plaza, rectilinear in form, surrounded by some of these historic buildings. We do not feel that the design by the city engineer that created the plaza in 1924 is in and of itself a significant example of urban design. When that plaza the grass was put in, it was really after a period of frustration where there were these numerous plans by James Osborne Craig and George Washington Smith, Luther Riggs, to sort of recast the plaza in more of a sort of Spanish or, say, Mexican colonial kind of motif. And that never happened, as we know. And there were also plans to build more substantial.
The scallop walls.
Oh, yeah, that one's in that, Pam.
Oh, yeah. Pam Post, yeah, with the exception of James Osborne Craig's scallop walls. Yeah. But yeah, there certainly was a completely different idea as to what the plaza should look like, but more of a traditional plaza that you would see in Mexico or in Spain, and rather than turf is basically sort of an Eastern concept, and the curbing, and obviously they wanted to appeal to people who could drive. Automobiles were becoming more and more popular, so I think their interest was more in practicality than it was in aesthetics, or encapsulating a tie-in with the Casa de la Guerra.
So I'm probably wandering a bit here, but so in a nutshell, we are supportive of the project. We do realize it will likely, like any large project, undergo further modifications, but we feel that the directions it's going is appropriate from a historic preservation standpoint. The loss of some of these features is not so substantive that the plaza or the surrounding historic resources would lose so much of their setting that their eligibility for being historical resources would be impacted. I think I'll leave it at that and let you ask questions if you have.
The other 250 pages, you don't want to?
I can go through 42
I'm just kidding.
pages.
Go through each one of them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Slow scroll. Okay, so if that completes your presentation, we'll go to public comment.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. If there's anyone in the room who'd like to speak on this item. Not seeing any movement. We do not have any virtual participants, so I'll just state for the record that we did receive written correspondence from Paulina Kahn, Susan Chamberlain, and another submission from Paulina Kahn, which was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. Back to you.
All right, back to the commission for questions. Any questions regarding the report?
Mr. Chair, I have some questions. I'm curious what you think was added to the California State Registry of Historical Landmarks in 1939?
Through the chair, we read the actual document that was submitted to the state, as well as the letter, which is in the report as an appendix. It does not specifically list the plaza. Now, this is 1938, and in fact, there's the letter from the state has a statement in it that says that they don't necessarily agree with all of the conclusions in that document, which was what in 1938 would have been considered a nomination form. And so our point there was just that it's not specifically listed in there. So if it was, we would certainly have noted that. And of course, that doesn't, whether that was in the state specifically called out, it is a historic resource, which is our report from 2008 does say, yeah, the plaza as a whole, as a compendium of structures and space, is historically significant.
The pepper tree, which is, I believe, a landmark, right? What is your understanding of what should happen if and when that pepper tree dies?
Okay. Oh, so I had this discussion with a friend of mine a couple of months ago that's in preservation. Generally, we encourage, in our practice, is to replace like for like. And in fact, we did a restoration plan for Stowe House and Gardens in Goleta Valley. And one of the directives in the future is all living things have a finite life. And so in that case, we would want them, for like a Norfolk pine or a bunya tree, we'd want them to be replaced in kind. And in this case, it would either have to be in kind or a tree. We have a landscape architect here. So.
He's out, Commissioner
Normally
Luker.
we do, but not
Yeah.
today.
You're right. Sorry.
We can
Generally, in some
pretend to
cases.
be, though.
Okay. I guess I'm being long-winded, but my point is if, for instance, you could not put a pepper tree back there because there is a biological reason, and I know that does happen because I live in Camarillo, and our property was it was part of the subdivision that was supposed to be citrus. You could buy an acre with a little cottage and a citrus grove and live happily ever after. So behind our house, there were 3 really, really large pepper trees, which unfortunately were infected by the oak fungus, and I can't think of the Latin name for it, but they had to be taken out. One of them was actually falling down. And so what we did in one case is we put in this Australian, it almost looks like a willow with really short leaves, but it's more resistant to this particular fungus because it kind of gives the same look, but it's more resistant.
Less pepper.
Yeah, I will say that pepper trees are a maintenance nightmare.
Yeah. They're a mess.
But in reading it, when we were doing the report, I did try to figure out what's the lifespan of a pepper tree. I was curious and it appears it's somewhere around 125 plus years.
Yeah.
So it's probably getting close, sort of like the palms, the Washingtonia palms in the center of the plaza. There were 2 originally that flanked sort of the back door to the old city hall, and one of them died a number of years ago. And the one now I'm not an arborist, but I have been showing that as their crowns get really more sparse and sparse, they're sort of heading into their retirement home phase of their life. So we like the trees to be, if they can't be the original tree, be something very similar, if that's possible.
I know you covered this in the report, but it's an issue for the public, so I want to clarify it. It has to do with the turf and whether the turf is purposefully planned as part of a coherent urban design or the result of a lack of consensus, a kind of unplanned expedient solution.
Our conclusion, and of course, to some extent, that's his opinion because we weren't there. But given the focus on developing these more sort of architectural plans for the plaza, and that none of those came to fruition. So here they are in 1924, the new city hall's built. And I think, honestly, my perception is that, and Pam's too, is that they just went, we've got to do something. We can't leave dirt. We've got to have a paved surface for the vehicles. And the most expeditious thing to do was to plant turf, which is cheap. They probably seeded it. And the city engineer designed this, sort of put the turf in the center, and they, surrounded by a concrete curb. I don't think, and I think a report says it's not an outstanding example of landscape design, and the engineer is not noted for landscape design. So we couldn't find any other projects he had worked on where, okay, he's got a body of work and this is an exemplar of that. And as Pam noted, it is an unusual, in a sense, which could make it historic, but we don't believe it is just the idea of turf in this Mediterranean setting. I mean, most plazas, even in the early 20th century, that were trying to emulate the Mediterranean style really didn't use turf. And as Pam said, turf is really something that was essentially came about in Great Britain in the 18th century for a variety of reasons, having to do with changes in landscape design.
So just on that, as a little bit of a counter, just play devil's advocate. So the San Marcos building, I think its original design did have turf. I think it was in a more designed way, maybe, and with fountain and with other elements. Or do you recall off the top of your head?
I'm familiar, yes.
Yeah.
There was a fountain, there was lush landscaping, and there were some pavers that had, instead of having
maybe
grout
that's what I'm
in
thinking.
between, they had
They had
turf. And now that you brought that up, Chair, originally the street in Spain, which now is all, pieces of flagstone that are mortared in.
It had grass too.
Yeah, it had grass between the mortar. There were no mortar, there was, yeah.
But in a more designed way.
Yeah, obviously, as part of this hole, they were creating a hole at El Paseo. They wanted to take this Spanish-era building and then recast it in this Mediterranean style, in a very romantic style, which of course was more elaborate and wonderful than anything that was ever built in California in the 1820s. So we just don't feel that turf in and of itself is an exemplar of anything. I don't mean to be rude, but we just don't see it as that.
And this may be beyond the scope of your work, but I'm interested. Have you had any contact with the owners of the News Press building? Any input from them?
Well, no, I can truthfully answer no, and we wouldn't, if someone approached us, I'll be perfectly blunt, we would say we were working for the city, and if they have concerns, they would go through the city.
Okay. And the last question is really, it's a philosophical one about preservation and what constitutes a contributing factor. Since the 20s, there have been cars in that plaza. Are automobiles ever considered, the presence of automobiles and vehicular traffic, ever considered like a contributing factor?
Yeah, I can answer that, actually. There are several examples of transportation design. I'm just not an area I'm very familiar with, but I do know, I've read some. And actually, it's the way like a street is designed or a new type of roadway. An example of something where some cars would actually be very beneficial to historic resources, actually in Italy and Milan. There's a building that was built by, I don't know if it's Fiat, but one of the early car manufacturers. And it actually has it almost is like a modern parking garage, and it has parking on top of the roof, but this was in the 1920s. Yeah. So when the car is so central to the design, then that can be significant. If the parking is there because there's a roadway that originally was parked with horses and carriages and such, and then as we transitioned to automobiles, moved on to automobiles, it doesn't make the presence of the automobile significant. But we do feel that having some variety in the paving designs is important because we do want to see some recollection of the roadway. So having the roadway there expressed in a different paving material is a way of recalling what was the original, not original, but the 1920s layout.
Thank you.
All right, other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Vice Chair Hooley.
Given that this project has a little ways to go in design review, ironing out details, et cetera, if all of the elements currently on this plan remained, but maybe the details are different, would you anticipate that this Phase 2 would have to be amended or changed?
Well, I would consult with Nicole about that, but generally, I mean, if it's really minor changes, you got a big project, you've got 5 windows, you can change their glazing pattern, or you're going to move a walkway 3 feet in one direction.
Yeah.
Usually that can be handled either in-house or through a memo. But if there are more substantive changes, and that can be, I'll be hypothetical. You review the design in a few months and you go, there's still too many paving materials, we want 2, or we want 3, or we want to reconfigure the one end of this to still be a curve, but not this kind of a curve. We don't and I'll be blunt here, we don't like the circular planners, but we think small square ones would work better. In that case, what generally happens, but we would, obviously, staff will direct us, is we would prepare an amended report, and it would just include, not the whole history section we regurgitated in this report, but it would focus on, okay, this is what was reviewed before, and this is what was, these are the changes, and here's the analysis of those changes. We often, I mean, that's not uncommon for us to do that. And sometimes, you know, and we've all been here on our side of the table and yours, where you feel, well, you know, we've had the presentation, we've seen the report, and we have questions, we made comments, but we really feel we want to come back when the plans are, when we've had a deep dive with the architects and the designers, and then sometimes we come back, we get continued and come back, you know, even if the plan doesn't change a lot. Sometimes the commission likes to hear from the architects to get the philosophy of what they're doing and how particular materials were chosen and such. So, you know, that's kind of the whole range of things that it can have, I mean, trajectories for review from our end.
Yeah, and that's also, I was actually going to touch on that a little bit in terms of structure. That's oftentimes why, for the sake of smoothness and continuing and not having a whole bunch of rounds of iteration, the normal thing is have both A and B, have the historic structures report that analyzes it, put it on pause, review the design. If the design changes, then they're going to be coming back later with a revision. If it's good enough, we can accept it, but them knowing that they're going to still, anything that they do that's a substantial change will need to get refitted back into the report somehow, whether it's so drastic that it's a new report or whether it's some combination of things. So this is a little bit more drawn out than normal, but at least it seems like if we can come to a conclusion on this and we're okay with as a general, knowing that we can still change some things design-wise, I think, and actually this brings up the sort of the bigger, more philosophical question of what is, or just sort of purpose question of what is the purpose of the historian's report. At the major move is the CEQA Secretary of Interior Standards discussion, and it could be that the report could be written slightly different, 10 different ways that improve 10 different designs, and then 1,000 ways that would say no, this is a negative impact. The core portion of the report, the core idea of the report is to say, does it meet the Secretary of Interior Standards, and is it approvable? Not necessarily that this is exactly the design that will for sure be the one, right? So we could still be okay with the report and say it meets Secretary of Interior Standards, but say we think the design could be a little bit better and this is how it can be tweaked. So we don't necessarily have to say because we approved a report, therefore the design has to be that design, and only, like, we can still make the design. So I want to make sure that because oftentimes they get paired together, so you kind of feel like if you approve the report, you have to approve the design as it was in the report. No, it just means that it made the Secretary of Interior hurdle, and then any other tweaks can happen as they go forward.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner Drury?
So the report's a standalone. So it's over here. The presentation by Brad Hess will come when it comes, right? But that'll be the substantive thing that we can talk about, design elements exactly as presented.
Yep. And if we disagree with the report, though, if we say, oh, we disagree with their understanding of a plaza and what defines a plaza, and that a building here defining a plaza, we disagree. We think a plaza should be T-shaped or whatever it is. We have an idea where we disagree with actually the fundamentals of what the report's saying and how it is actually affecting the Secretary of Interior Standards. So, for example, the lawn. If we said this was the first lawn ever in America, and and we disagree with their analysis of it, and we think that this is a sacred thing that really is being broken with the Secretary of Interior Standards.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair. I do want to clarify that you need to separate the phase one from the phase two. So there was already a phase one that evaluated the historic resource that determined that the lawn was not historic. So I don't want to get us into another cycle where we're debating whether or not the lawn is historic. That's been decided. The commission voted on it and accepted that phase one report.
Okay, good point.
So you can't go back.
I'll
to
use a
anything
different
else covered in
example.
the phase one.
Okay. I'll pick a different element. Sorry. I'll pick a different element. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Okay, different element that it's sandstone is one of the paving materials. materials or whatever. Like, and if we feel like that actually destroys that this design does not meet with the Secretary of Interior standards because it affects it so badly, it changes the plaza so badly, then this is our time to disagree with their analysis of the design applied to the Secretary of Interior standards. So,
Chair.
yeah.
I think I have a related question. So speculative. Let's assume that ownership of the News Press building will change. It will. We know that. If the function of the News Press building changes, it will, perhaps to residential. Does that still fit in with your view of what a plaza constitutes? How might that affect both the role of the plaza, the historic report, et cetera? Suddenly it's a very large residential unit that governs that
You have to
whole
wiggle the mouse
one
every
end
so
of
often
the,
to keep
Oh,
the thing
okay,
alive.
thank you. I was wondering why.
that whole one end of the plaza. I don't know if you've had opportunity to consider
And
that.
they all stick their surfboards in the balcony.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a question, because it's
Yeah.
gonna happen. at
So,
some
so
point.
change of
Like
use.
that. The parking lot, which is huge. So
So-
if the parking lot and the building changed ownerships and became a residence, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I would just hypothesize that if it becomes residential, which it could highly likely be, I would say that the plaza configuration would be even more in keeping with residential,
Overlooking
usage. The overlooking plaza, be able to use it pedestrian-wise. I just want to make one more comment, I just happened to think about Mr. Dorn's.
Mr. Chair, I thought isn't the commission asking questions and discussing?
Yeah, this is.
I mean, some of us down here have had no chance to talk.
Okay, well,
And I understand what the salesmanship is here, so I simply would like to get it worded edgewise.
We'll definitely get worded
Is
edge.
it all right
I'm
if I
trying to
just say
see
in
on-
answer to Mr. Dorn's
Yeah.
question? Yeah, just one. I just happened to think in hypothesizing the scallop wall of James Osborne Craig, who died in 1922. And his idea obviously was to have, I think, a more open plaza, because otherwise, why would you have this low wall where people are dining, they want to look out into cars driving by? I mean, just a hypothesis, but it's something to think about, that when he designed that wall, that low wall, that the idea was for people to be dining there and looking out, into this plaza. So
Okay.
just food for thought.
Commissioner Lembeck, you had a question?
I would hate to think of a scalloped wall as being a driving influence in this plaza. We never know. One of the problems I have, and I hope that we didn't make a mistake maybe with phase one in saying that a lawn was inappropriate. What I see in Santa Barbara is not a city with large palatial mansions and plazas and lawns and whatever. I see more of a village. And one of the things that the report writer commented on is that the plaza's utilitarian design does not convey the significance of the plaza and the surrounding historic structures. Well, utilitarian design was people coming out here out of the De La Guerra, home and having a barbecue, and we know they found bones from the sheep or whatever under in the area in front of the old city hall. But what we have in Santa Barbara is a very utilitarian or pedestrian kind of need. And that's what we had. We didn't have a need for large plazas or whatever. And it concerns me that what we're doing is creating a plaza structure here of hard surfaces, which probably aren't inviting to a family, to kids. People want to come down and hang around and maybe play in the splash in the splash fountain. We're creating something which is more formal and structured, and is not of a design which is supposed to be significant to change the character of the plaza. And that's why I'm sitting here saying, gosh, we're we're taking something which is now maybe, or at least one time was used by a lot of people, and we're creating something which may not be used by a lot of people. We're assuming that a hard surface plaza is going to be more attractive, more used, and more desired than a lawned park would have been. And I don't think we could go and start putting paving areas in Mission Park across from the Mission and think that it's going to make a lot of people happy. And I don't know that ignoring how people would want to use this space is what we want to do either. Now, I could be way off on that, but I'm concerned that the hard surface is not going to be comfortable. I look at the recently finished Library Plaza, all hard surface. Before there was a lawn or whatever in the middle of it, so on and so forth. It's all hard surface, and you could, if you chose to, you say, well, that's kind of cold. That's kind of not where you want to have kids go rolling around and playing or whatever. It's not maybe an attractive space from the standpoint of the casualness, the casual nature of our community. And I hope that we aren't getting in the same thing here of having a hard surface plaza, which is not comfortable to be in.
So, and I'll go to Commissioner Ensberg after this, but I do want to touch on that because I want to touch on it in terms of process. So I do think this project has gone on for so long that a lot of times it's easy to forget portions that were done or not done. I think as adopting the report and this report decision is about, is my understanding of it, is that we have accepted the first part, which said that the lawn was not the key historic feature that was sacred and needed to be protected at all costs. And for the record, I was the only one arguing for the lawn at the time. Okay, I was the only one disagreeing. But with that being said, that was a discussion of whether it was a historic feature or not. Then the next, and whether it meets Secretary of Interior standards. There could be all kinds of pros and cons and reasons for or against, including whether it feels like a proper Santa Barbara urban discussion as well. But I do think that it's important that as a committee or a commission, whichever one, that we continue to stay, we don't relitigate things or go backwards on where we're going for the sake of the applicant. I think it's on, even when we actually change commissioners, I still think for the sake of the sort of respect and continuation of the commission, that we respect what previous decisions were, if possible, if there's not new evidence or not grossly different. That being said, I don't think that us accepting or not this report, but us accepting this report means that we absolutely have to then totally approve everything that as it's been proposed. I think we shouldn't be going backwards on what the fundamentals are for the Secretary of Interior analysis of the plaza and what is the Plaza de la Guerra and that. So if we disagree with those, I think we need to say that and why right now. But I don't think we should be going backwards on what we have officially approved before. So while I think that, as you know, that I think that the lawn design might be a better design or a portion of, I still think I'm not going to vote for it now because everyone else voted it the other way, and I'm respecting the HLC's past votings. So with that, and then I'll go to Commissioner Ensberg as well, we can keep going with the discussion, but I think we should really focus on, if we disagree with something about this report, what do we disagree with and why? And considering that, not 1 month ago, we disagreed for one of the only times ever with one of the reports, but we had very specific reasons why we disagreed with it, and there were arguments made for that as to what we didn't see the historians proving, and why. So I think we should be sticking on that kind of realm for this. When it comes to design, we can talk about that when the design comes before us. But, so that's why I'd ask the commissioners to, so with that, ideas for what the report is saying and why you agree or disagree with it. Which portion?
So we are in comments now?
Yeah, let's roll from, we're still in questions, you're right. So actually, if there, well, let's mix them, but we're having, yeah, so if you have specific questions, let's go there, and then we can roll into comments as part of this.
Well, I have a gadillion questions, but I don't think they're very helpful at this point.
Okay.
So I will just wait till you're ready to go to comments and then.
Okay, well, yeah, so.
Let's go to comments.
Do you
okay,
want?
everyone,
do you want?
let's roll into comments, go for it.
Except, I've got a question.
Okay.
And it has to do with the process. So in the past, advice from staff has been that once we accept historic structures report, then for the most part, we've cast the further work related to that historic structures report. So I'm concerned in this case that if we accept or adopt this historic structures report and the project continues to evolve, then this report ultimately gets, and this is the reason why we have A and B. You know, we evaluate A, we put it on hold, we evaluate B, we have a discussion, we come back and various people say, well, that's going to change the report gets changed, we come back again. So I'm concerned that if the commission moves forward to adopt this report, that in my mind, that doesn't lock us into the solution, but it is part of the solution. So we're inconsistent if we say on one hand, we're bound by what the adopted document says, and on the other hand, we're not. That's inconsistent to me.
Yeah.
I had a thought on that.
Yeah, before we did the A and B, often the commission would adopt the phase 2, and then we'd have to have addendum after addendum after addendum every time the project changed. And that we might have to come to addendums if the design changes enough. I can't tell the future, but that is how that's why we sort of waited on it. But this one is going to also have a EIR, so that a lot of.
So
If I could add on to
So
that.
that adds a whole nother layer.
If I could add on to that, the phase 1 is a little more, it locks you in. Like that is locked in on that the structure is historic and what makes it historic. The phase 2, that locks the applicant in a little more because it's based on that current design, like the design that the report is evaluating. So as has been discussed, if the design changes enough, they'll need to do an addendum to the report. So if you accept this report today and the design changes, that doesn't mean you're just bound to.
So I would want to add one little piece to that because I think that this is what we've seen before. One of the things where we have locked ourselves in is we can't say later that we now change our mind and think that this grass, as the example.
We want the lawn back.
Not just we want the lawn back, but we think it's and for the reason of historic feature. So I think that's where the crux is. If we're accepting the statements about what is and is not historic about this and why, then we can't go backwards afterwards and say, no, actually, we take it back because we don't like that anymore. So I think that's where we get locked into. We're not locked into this design. Right. So we can make them change the design and then the historic structures report. It's just a very long way of doing it, so we try to avoid that as much as possible for the applicant's sake. All right, want to kick us off with comments, Commissioner Ensberg?
If you would like.
Sure, and I think a key thing is, because we aren't reviewing the design necessarily, we're reviewing the design of the actual thing. I think a key thing is the report's analysis of the design, of the elements and how things are driving or not. I don't know if that helps.
I don't know.
Okay, let's try it.
Let's
see what happens.
I will do my best, okay? And I want to start by, I want to apologize to you. And I want you all to know how much I respect you and how much I appreciate the work. And I have the greatest respect for the historical report, for all of the work that the staff has done. Absolutely, 100%. And to all of you, the commission. When I was a young designer, if you want to be locked in, you're locked in. And hope like heck that it comes out well. Because once it's in there, it's in there. And so sometimes it's good, you might be thankful that someone came and said, hey, have you really thought, what could go wrong with this? Is there anything that we should maybe think about? And when I was a young designer, I remember working with an amazing architect who was my mentor, and we were working on the Vail Athletic Club and Hotel in Colorado. And every time we would go into the building and walk around, under construction, he would always stop at every place and say, wait, let's look at this. Does this still make sense? What are we doing? Is it appropriate? Should anything change? And I always thought, as a young one, I'm like, oh boy, here he goes again. But it was true, it's like when you're going down a road, it seems like the right way to go. But, things happen and you learn more as you go. And then maybe maybe the lawn isn't historic, but is there a reason it should be there for another reason? Maybe with all the housing that we're getting downtown, maybe it makes sense to have lawn. Not because it was historic or not historic, but because there will be more families living downtown, and they may like Alice Keck Park or like Alameda Park. We need more places for kids to kick a soccer ball around or just to go hang out on the lawn, because none of them have yards. So I don't want to, rain on the parade, or I want you to really understand that I appreciate everything. It's just, stop and think, what is really essential? And it's so, right now with these fires and everything, it's like, what really do we need to do? Like, my favorite space in Santa Barbara when I first came here, one of my most favorite, and it just kind of blew my mind, besides the stone pines, was the Historical Museum courtyard with the DG. And I'm like, every time I go there and they have it all set up with the tables, and it's just like the most incredible space, like nowhere else. You're in Santa Barbara. You're sitting on the DG with the tables and the beautiful building around. That to me is Santa Barbara. So I just put that out there to really, just go back to your most inner soul and what really is, what's the most simple design? The simplest design is the hardest one to get to. What can be removed? What is unessential? What's not necessary? So I do have great concerns, and I know everybody's worked really, really hard with the greatest intention and to try to do something really great for the community, but I'm not sure we got there yet. And so I apologize again. I don't want to rain on the parade. I don't want to make I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable or feel like they haven't done a good job. You have done a good job. But I think it's good to step back and to really look again and say, is all of this really necessary? Is it really working? And I would say that I guess finally I'll say that the letters that we received, I related to those letters very much. And I do think that the way that the space is right now is very functional. Like the curbs tell you, when it's a multi-purpose space. When we have, Fiesta, you put the stage right up with the beautiful building behind it, and you bring it in. You call the tent people, who are the rental people. They bring it in. You've got that gorgeous building behind you, and then you're spreading out towards the Casa de la Guerra, and then all the vendors know exactly where to put their tent, because it's right at the curb level. And all of the trucks that feed those tents go around, and they know, where to stop because there's a curb there. So there's some functional, beauty in the simplicity and the functionality that it is. Doesn't mean we can't say we don't want to have cars there. I mean, we could do that without having to go to all of this other expense and change. So I will just say to please, I think we should revisit the report. I think, maybe as they are suggesting that perhaps what do they call it, a peer review, perhaps another opinion. I don't know, whatever makes the most sense, but I want to be sure that that you understand how much I appreciate, and I understand, or maybe I don't understand. But, so I'll just stop there, and I will.
Commissioner Jordan, I want to give everyone a chance, and That was a lot longer than I think.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna all have, but.
Yeah.
But I think, let's have some quick comment, and then I think we need to tie it together and have a refocus on it. And
Because we do have other things on the agenda.
Yes, and the other aspect is, I think it's really important that we are very clear about what we're reviewing here. We're reviewing the report, and if people aren't comfortable approving that report and want to pause it, that's fine. I think that, so that we are clear, we need to, if we don't agree with this report, we are the peer review. So we are, if we disagree, we need to say why we disagree with their report from the report standpoint, from analyzing a historic structures report, applying it to the Secretary of Interior standards. So the design itself, there could be 1,000 designs, or at least 10 designs that we could approve and are good. There could be other designs that we won't approve, but all of them might meet the Secretary of Interior standards. And I think we need to keep on the analysis of the report for the report of what it's, and if they have to do another iteration, so be it. But we're talking about the report right now. I think it's important to focus on.
Then can I just say that I find that the report does not meet the intention of the interior standards.
And then can you be specific about what analysis of it? What doesn't it? So is it what is it in the report that you're finding that isn't, like, for example, their analysis of what is a plaza and why? How is it defined? Is defined by buildings, structures in a certain shape.
Again, I just want to make sure that we're focusing on the phase 2, because we can't focus on,
about the building, about the addition of the
yeah.
pavilion as it helps reinforce the plaza as a space defined by buildings. So as the addition of that pavilion as part of that. So whatever these other pieces are, how that you disagree with that, those actually do not meet the Secretary of Interior standards. I think that's really important, because if we're going to require them to revise the report or not agree with it, we need to be specific as to what it is. Mm-hmm. And like the last report that from last year that was mentioned, there were clear reasons, and there were why people could not support it, and they were able to be articulated specifically. So that's what I would ask for everyone, that we stay on that and not go down the rabbit hole of whether we think there's a better design out there that also meets the Secretary of Interior standards, because that's a separate question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so others want to comment?
I would like to kind of fill in.
Okay, let's go to Commissioner Jordan, because he had spoken first, then we'll go to you, Commissioner Levick.
I'll try to keep my comments as short. The comment "we're not there yet" is a comment about the design, in my opinion, and not about the HSSR. This document does what an HSSR is supposed to do. It provides a timeline and a narrative history of the plaza. It identifies the features of the plaza. It lists the relevant preservation criteria, and it offers a qualified professional opinion about how a proposed plan meets or does not meet the relevant criteria. It gives this commission what we need to make our assessment of the design. And I see his approval of this as a separate act from approving any of the proposed design. It's also clear that there are two different plazas. There's the history of the plaza that we have today, the real history of a real place, and then there's a history of visions of this plaza, different proposals over decades about what that plaza could be. But we have to deal with the real place that exists, and I think that's what this HSSR describes. And I am comfortable approving it. That does not mean that I'll approve every detail of the plan that comes up, and I understand that in that case, there's a process in place for addendums.
All right, Commissioner Lendick.
Yeah, I hear what Mr. Jordan is saying. I don't know that I agree, unfortunately. This document meets some very physical requirements of historic preservation. Curbs, no curbs, all that stuff. It meets that quite nicely. What it doesn't do is it doesn't look at how this plaza was used in 1924, the era of significance, or the end of the era of significance. and transposing that use, even how it was used in 1944, 54, 64, and 74. It doesn't talk about those things. It talks about the hard materials. And the plaza, I've come to realize, is the plaza was used in a lot of different ways that required a softer, more pedestrian, whatever approach, utilitarian approach. It required that. And so they have met the standard of spatial relationships and whatever, but they've not met the cultural, social review that I think is required. And that may come out of an EIR. I mean, that may have to be in an EIR because it's more subjective and this is more objective. But I have a problem today, with saying that this now is a document that I would approve.
And could you say, you kind of were sure, and it seemed like you were attempting to articulate what it was about this that you disagree that this design does not meet the Secretary of Interior standards I'm trying to understand what the argument is. Is the argument because it was a pedestrian-oriented place in the middle of the road that wrapped around, or what is the argument for? What is it breaking in the Secretary of Interior standards, and why? What is it not fulfilling? This design. It could be that, like I said before, 10 or 100, 1,000 designs could fulfill the Secretary of Interior standards, and then some couldn't. So I'll just throw out an example of what, in my mind, what couldn't. So if you proposed 2 buildings that cut into the middle of this plaza and totally changed the space of the plaza as a oblong rectangle, plaza that has all these bases on history, that I would say you're changing the character defining features.
Is the property going to be used as it was historically used, or will it be given a new use that requires minimal change to its distinctive materials, features, spaces, and spatial relationships? Well, the property, again, my notes are on my iPad, and it's tough to find all of my notes. Let's say the property, 10 years ago was used by people laying around on a towel, sunning themselves and eating lunch on the grass at noon. Will this plaza be used for people laying around on a towel, on a hard surface, eating their lunch, in 5 years? I don't think it will be. I think the use will be different.
So, so that'd be a question for the historians. Does a change of use like that entail, first of all, this is for rehabilitation in terms of as a standard, which is more broad than, like our pure restoration or preservation. But does change of use of that sort, is that ever entered into, and if so, why does it meet or not?
Grump, would you like me to answer that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Or try to.
Yes, a change in use can affect the ability of a resource to convey its historic significance, its cultural associations, et cetera, as Commissioner Lenvik noted. In this case, and I think this is the crux of both our Phase 1 report and what we've prepared here, to Pam and I, what is significant about the plaza as far as its use is it is the sort of premier public gathering space in Santa Barbara since the Presidio went into ruins in the early 1840s. So before that, and this is kind of long-winded, but that's where the flagpole was and that's where people sort of gathered. But when that went into ruin, then with the De La Guerra family being the preeminent family in town, their big house there, the open area in front, which the De La Guerras used as an open space for their own fiestas and for some public gatherings, it sort of started that history, that cultural association. And that will continue in our minds, whether there is grass or if the surface was decomposed granite or some other material. It's the use, it's not the specific use of, somebody maybe sunbathed there or had a drink at night when they're not supposed to. That's a little levity. But there's all kinds of uses, but the umbrella for those is public gathering space. And so we're looking at it, is what they're proposing, not in every detail, but is it going to change the use? So if it's a public gathering space and the proposal is to gate it in and you'll have to buy a ticket to go inside, yeah, that's a significant impact, even though it's not physical in some ways, but it changes the use. In our feeling, this is still the premier and will be the premier gathering space historically for the city.
Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. Go right ahead.
I just want to reiterate what Tim has said and validate that, and just add a little bit to that. What is the space being used for now? I would hazard to say if you go through and see the grassy area, you don't see maybe a few homeless people. You don't see people picnicking on the grass. And part of the reason that the auto space was created was because of the news press of City Hall. They have their own parking spaces. So it's no longer, I think, so valid to say you need to have cars going around, in a semicircular fashion. So we find that it is a public space that can be used by the public, even more enhanced by the fact that it offers a fully pedestrian access, for people to enjoy. So, and we don't think it's, as I say, I agree with Tim, it doesn't really change the purpose of the plaza so much as maybe it changes the materials.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
All right. Vice Chair Uli.
I just want to recognize the frustration in the room about this, and acknowledge that given the context for which this Phase 2 is written, it's my opinion that it does meet the interior standards. They evaluated a project that was submitted to them. The document went through, as Commissioner Dordan outlined, went through a rigorous construction, and it meets all of those requirements. Whether we accept the design or not, I think, is the rub, and we're not evaluating that today. And if adopting this document doesn't hamstring us from putting the applicant through the ringer when the design does come to us, then I would support adopting the document, and then if it changes, let it go through its addendums and whatever happens as a result of future hearings. But I don't see any flaw in the report and the document as it was submitted.
All right. Other thoughts? And yeah, Commissioner Butler, and then Commissioner Butler and Drury, we haven't heard from either of you, and then we'll try to wrap it up and get a vote on something. All right.
Quick. I would support Commissioner Uli and Dordan's view. That's my view. I would support the report.
Okay. All right, Commissioner.
Yeah, I do too. I will accept the report and vote accordingly.
All right. Okay. So I think we've heard from everyone. Let's get a motion. Thank you.
Mr.
Brain's
Chair,
fried.
I'll move to accept accept Phase 2 Historic Structures Size Report and Cultural Landscape Study prepared by Post Hazeltine Associates.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Under discussion. Any final discussion on this?
As long as it's well noted that our hands are not tied if we want to change our mind later.
Of course.
Except that I don't think that the lawn will ever come back, but there you have it.
Well, except for that, as long as the principles that we're accepting of the Secretary of Interior standards that they're using to analyze this.
Correct.
We're consistent with that, which is
Correct.
the thing that we're accepting, not necessarily the design. Okay. All right, all good? Okay.
Okay. Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then let's do a roll call vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Oh, no.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
No.
Vice Chair Uli,
Yes.
and Chair Grunbein.
Aye.
Motion passes, and then Commissioner Ensberg and Levick, can you please state your reasons for a no vote?
Do you want to go first?
You want to turn on your mic too? There you go. Great.
Go ahead.
I believe that the requirement for minimal change to its distinctive features, materials, spaces, and spatial relationship is not met.
It's so complicated. So complicated. I don't believe that the use of De La Guerra Plaza, the historic use of De La Guerra Plaza, was sufficiently considered in the review of the physical changes that are being proposed by the, and being reviewed by the current design.
Okay. All right. Thank you both. All right. Thank you. All right. So we are. Yeah. Thank you very much. All right. So then we are on to item 5. I'm going to have to be leaving at 4:30. But we can, if you want, we can either start and hand off, or whatever is the pleasure. All right, we'll start and hand off. Okay. Let's start and then hand off. All right, so item 5 is a continued item for final approval, 3204 Calle Pinon. This is listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, constructed in 1926 in the Craftsman style. Proposal to demolish an existing garage, shed, and laundry room to construct a new addition and garage attached to the existing 1,350 square foot single unit residence. Project includes a new side porch, terrace, and deck, as well as tree removal, roof replacement, driveway replacement, and interior remodel. Final approval is requested. Project plans must demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on September 11th, 2024, which is when the project was last reviewed. So welcome.
There's no comments?
Oh, yes. So we'll, if you can introduce yourselves for the record, and then we'll go into any comments from staff, and then we'll read the motion from last time, and then go from there.
Kate Svensson, designer for the project, and this is the homeowner.
Rebecca Faunus.
All right, welcome. All right, and then
Thanks for your patience.
Yes.
That other
You
one
got
took an
stuck behind
hour
a
long.
hard one.
This will be the easiest one for you after this, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any comments from staff?
No comments from staff at this time.
Okay. Oh, right. We'll go to the motion. The motion was for project design approval with the comments and findings. 1, consider replacing the existing sliding door with a French door or something more Craftsman style. 2, return with the landscape plan. 3, the project compatibility analysis findings generally have been met, and with the project's design is consistent with design to guidelines. Design is projects are compatible with
I
design.
don't think you have to
blah
read
blah.
through all of
Yeah,
them.
I was seeing if there was anything in particular. Okay, and then 4, as required for resources on the historic resources inventory, the exterior alterations are being made primarily for and will substantially advance restoration of the historic resource to its original appearance, and the exterior alterations are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. Motion was by Uli, second was by Dorden, 7-0. Grumbine and Drury were absent. The motion carried. Okay, so you can go questions, but no vote. And then I did review it, but I might not be here for the vote, so we'll see.
We do still have
We still have a
quorum with the
quorum.
remaining 5 members, and
Yes.
the rest of you are allowed to leave.
No one go anywhere.
I'm just going to
Okay.
skip to the door, I guess, because everything else has been reviewed, and we have a landscape plan, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, and actually, sorry, I should have mentioned one more thing. So if you can go through and answer the comments, and then also anything that's new
No,
from,
nothing, literally just one door. That's
okay,
it.
and then,
And the
all right.
landscape plan. So I'm going to just,
The rest
Good.
of them were findings.
yes, so the door, can I zoom in here? Is it touched?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, thank you. That's so much better. Okay, so this is the door that used to be just a sliding door, and the previous hearing, they suggested to add this Craftsman detail on top, so literally that's the only change we've made, nothing else has changed. And then the landscape plan, I'm hoping our landscape architect is on Zoom somewhere.
I can't remember, did you review the materials last time?
Yes,
Okay.
everything has been, yeah, literally we only had one door. Just gotta zoom out of this, oops. Our civil stuff, structural stuff, let me get to the landscape. Oops. So I'm hoping Robert Adams was here on Zoom because he's not here in person, but basically we, you know, he,
Well, we can ask, do we have someone
so I'm not a landscape
on
architect.
Zoom that,
What was the name of the landscape designer?
Robert Adams.
I do not have that name on Zoom, no.
Oh, wonderful. I am not a landscape architect.
That's all right.
So
Do your best.
he drew
Okay.
something really, really pretty and within the neighborhood compatibility and totally, you know, low watering situation and softened. I think he actually, I see that he added hedges along the corner of the property next to the existing stone retaining wall. And we had the removal of the tree in the driveway, which was part of the project. And he added some new trees on both sides of the driveway to kind of replace that big palm that we had. That was some fancy palm that I don't know the name of. But yeah, so last time we didn't have any landscape plan because we kind of did very minimal changes to it. So he added quite a bit to soften the area in this neighborhood. So and I think he has his little bushes and stuff here. And this is the driveway material was missing last time. So this is the new driveway material for pavers.
great. All right, and since we don't even have our landscape architect here, it's the blind leading the blind. Partial blind.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then
I'm
this is a
definitely
hardscape
blind.
plan. Can you,
Do you want to zoom in?
yeah. Okay. And did you have this last time?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you can scroll down, and then maybe just keep going through the rest of the set too.
So they're gonna keep,
Just details. I think it's all details at this
Yeah,
point.
landscape
Okay.
details.
Landscape details.
All right, so does that conclude your presentation?
That does.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to public comment. Anyone in the room wishing to comment? All right, not seeing anyone. Do you have anyone online?
Thank you, Chair Grumbrine. We do have one virtual participant online. If they want to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Not seeing any raised hands, and we did not receive any written correspondence, so back to the commission.
All right, to the commission for questions. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to confirm, you mentioned one tree was being removed. Is that the only?
Yes.
Okay, so as far as extract, it's just the one, and that's where the
You can hide it.
driveway?
Yeah,
is?
so
And that's where the
yeah.
pavers that you showed?
Palm tree.
So
Okay,
Cannery
okay.
Island date palm. That's the tree that's
Okay.
been removed. Yeah.
And then if you could scroll to the corner view, scroll up, there's a large tree. That says, does that say
Oh, back down by the
retained,
front
right?
door.
So are those all currently present there, or would those
I think
be-
these fruit trees are present. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, this says new. Sorry, this one says new. This one is existing, I think.
And
Yeah, no,
then-
that's existing. The hedges.
The hedge,
The hedge is
okay.
new.
I think just trying to
Existing
distinguish
oak,
between
yeah.
what would be new. and-
The new, I think, is these purple
says, yeah,
things,
new pink
and then the
farm.
three fruit trees in the front, and this one, and obviously all the hedges are new along the property line.
Okay, thank you.
And the orange tree is going. You see,
what?
remove existing orange tree.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Oh, so, okay.
Out with the citrus.
All right. Any other questions?
So is that photocarpus all the way around?
I believe. Yes, correct. Yes, yes, all the way around behind the stone wall.
Green wall around the site?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's just a little quivering, so.
That's a
All
lot.
right, any other
I wish I had a nursery. Sorry.
All right. All right, let's roll into comments.
Yes.
What is everyone thinking?
One comment I would make is to make a motion.
All right. To deny?
Oh,
Sorry, too soon.
back to the drawing board.
You couldn't help yourself. No, God, no. Oh, my goodness. No, my motion would be to approve, to make a motion for final approval.
Second.
Oh, tie goes to Commissioner Butler.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
you.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All right.
Mr. Chair, I think the motion should also include that the plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that we already received.
Official,
Oh, we have to
you
read.
got to make the official findings.
But I don't think there are any findings. It's just making that statement that
Oh,
the
got
plans
it.
are substantial conformance.
Yeah, you can vocalize the statement and we can include it in the motion, but it's kind of,
Implied.
Implicit?
yeah, implied,
It's
yes.
implicit.
That you're
Okay.
giving final approval on that basis.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Butler.
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan, excuse me.
Yes.
Commissioner Drury.
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik.
Pardon, but Commissioner Drury, can you abstain?
Oh, yeah.
You can make the motion, but
Oh, actually, can he make the motion?
yes, he can. He just can't vote on it.
Can.
Ooh,
I'm going to trust Vice Chair.
Yeah,
okay.
That's why he's vice.
But he can't comment on it.
he can't vote on it. Can't vote on his own motion. He
Oh,
can make
gotcha,
it.
yeah, okay. Nice, okay, well, this is, yeah. This is a good thing you're vice chair, you know that. All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll
I
continue.
apologize. I didn't
We'll
technically
reset the
finish
vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's reset the vote, yeah.
Okay, we'll restart. Commissioner Butler.
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan.
Yes.
Commissioner Drury.
Abstain.
Commissioner Ensberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik.
Yes.
Vice Chair Uli.
Yes.
And Chair Grunberg.
Aye.
Motion passes.
You
Thank
have
you.
to
right.
abstain as well because you weren't here unless you watched.
I watched
Did
the
you
video,
watch it? Okay,
yeah.
good enough.
Yeah.
Get ourselves all tied up in parliamentary business.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Good luck on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the appeal period is 10 days to city council. All right, great. All right, and now I will hand over to Vice Chair Uli.
You made it.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Minutes to spare.
Yeah, that's true. All right, thank you all. And, all right. And if you go past 6 o'clock, it's not my fault.
Well, there's no,
Actually, I have to step down, so. here.
there's no pizza here, so we can't go past 6 o'clock. The hinge fell off of that thing. Good. Needs to go to the maintenance shop. All right. This brings us to item number 6, 117 East Ortega Street, located in EPV Part 1 and listed as a historic resource on the inventory, constructed in 1890 in the Italianate Queen Anne style, proposed to convert the existing two-story single-unit residence to a duplex with no exterior changes other than paint, and develop a new fourplex and open yard area at the rear of the site. The project will result in a 6-unit development under the city's average unit size density program. Project includes landscaping and hardscaping changes. Project design approval is requested. Please tell us who you are and your presentation.
All right, I'm Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning.
Lonnie Roy, agent for the property owner.
And do you want to pull up the minutes from the last hearing?
Do we have them? It was continued indefinitely. The commission thanks the applicant for a wonderful project, and we appreciate the sensitivity to adjacent joining historic resources. Study the color palette with suggestions of a lighter or brighter colors. That's kind of contradictory, isn't it? And return with multiple ranges of color chips. The two buildings being different colors is acceptable. Study breaking up the large wall pane on the east and west elevations with either changing of pattern or additional windows and/or doors. Study examples of the way other Italianate buildings break up wall massing. The majority of the commission believe that it is better designed to have the building to be back and the open space between the two structures. The commission appreciates the applicant putting the building in the middle to be sensitive to the neighboring historic resource, but the commission believes the project would not infringe on that resource. Develop landscape design with useful artificial turf. Continue to develop a porch design, study examples of Italianate porches and widen and/or deepen the porch to ideally fit seating. Study articulation at the base of the building so that it relates more to the front building. Suggestion of a taller board at the base or other base treatment. Study the arrangement of windows and porch on the east and west elevations to find a more symmetrical placement. Windowsill colors should be the same as the surrounding colors. Uli House, motion carried.
All right, so let's start. I'm not going to go with these in order. I'm going to go kind of with the bigger things first and work backwards. So we were able to coordinate with a couple other city departments, fire and transportation, to get them to allow us to put this building in the back of the property instead of in the middle, so that anyway, we were able to engineer it so that everybody was happy with that. And your direction from the last hearing was really helpful, working with the other departments too. So the building is now moved into the back portion a lot, and we've got the open space in between the two buildings, which was, I think that was like the biggest request kind of coming out of the last hearing. And then you'd asked us to eliminate the artificial turf in the open space. So what we're proposing instead is this community garden area, edible food gardens, landscaping, trees, sort of these walkways to this central, tree in the middle. But rather than just a turf area, it's now this sort of more formal space, which is what you'd been asking for. So now we'll go back into the sort of the other issues. So why don't we look at the colors real quick? And let's just look at the colors we have on here right now. So we actually, we stuck with the original color. One of the reasons, well, first of all, we think it's an appropriate color for the style, and there's other buildings around that are similar to this, but the color is going to lighten up from what we put on there initially, and so we have this same color proposed. I forget what it's called, but we brought some other color chips to look at. If the board feels really strongly about this, we can pick a different color, but it's Majorca green. So just simple green, white trim. We made the window trim match the door trim, which was another one of the comments. And actually, while we're on the elevations here, you can see that we've added that board detail around the bottom to give it sort of that same, plinth thing that the other, so that goes all the way around the entire building. And then we did further develop the porches. Yeah, let's just look at these. Most of this stuff was on the elevations anyway. So the top elevation, there was that sort of large blank area here previously. So we changed where the window was in that bedroom to eliminate that and get a more sort of rhythmic spacing of windows along that elevation. We enhanced this porch feature. We've got sort of the Italianate designs on there. And then we used to just have, I think we had just one small covering over this door here, and it looked a little, the symmetry was weird. It wasn't centered, but it wasn't far enough off center. I always like stuff to either be right perfectly centered or like really not centered at all. And we were like right in between those. So, but expanding this whole porch to the whole elevation helps with that, and ends up with what we have here. And let's see, what else is here? I think we covered, I think that's everything. If I missed something, pointed out, but I think that covers what was in the minutes of last time.
All right, does that conclude your?
That does.
We'll open public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair Uli. We currently do not have any virtual participants and no one in the room.
Is empty.
Then we did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll actually just turn it back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Close public hearing and bring it to the commission for questions.
Yes, Mr. Chair, may I? Did you bring any car swatches?
Yeah,
Here.
Commissioner Drury, we do. We have some other color swatches here.
So if CATV could put it on the screen, then we can all see them.
Is that the one closest to me? Is that the Majorca?
The one on the upper
Yeah.
right of this grid is
Yeah.
the Majorca green.
So I guess this sort of goes into comment, but it's much more saturated in your reproductions here than it would be in. So
Yes.
I like that fine. That's it's a comment question. Yeah.
You might want to zoom in on it, so this one here.
Yeah, the monitors, color can't be trusted on monitors anyway.
It can't be trusted in
No rendering other
PDFs,
than-
and it can't be trusted on monitors, and you just,
No rendering other than the paintbrush.
No.
Yeah.
It's true.
and it's gonna look different on a big wall than it does on that little I mean, yeah, we know the challenges.
Other questions?
Yeah, one question, Vice Chair. Uli, you have 2 more elevations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was confused because they seem like, they look identical. Did I miss something?
They are rotations of each other. They're like 180-degree rotations of each other, so.
Maybe go to the plan then, I guess. Maybe
Yeah.
Get it better there.
Yeah, this is good. Let's pull that up. So you can see what we have going on here is, yeah, this side of the building is basically 100. It's just the rotation of that one, so it would look the same if you were.
Right,
Rinse and
now I
repeat,
get it.
basically.
Right. And then that door, is the door, this is the second floor, so first floor? Okay, I see. Okay, that's, I was just confused about the, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, lighting details, do you have some exterior lighting details for the proposed? I didn't see,
Yeah, they might not be in here.
I didn't see any.
I would say it's probably a gap in the plans right now. Yeah, it's a gap.
Can you describe what the lighting fixtures will be, and then we'll expect them to be on the final drawings?
There'll be something that's perfectly appropriate to this style.
Pardon
Well
my
said.
inter-
See, at least I have you on the record.
What color, what
Well,
lumen?
pardon the interruption, through the chair to the rest of the commission. Yeah, lighting can be part of the final approval plan, so it's okay if they don't have it right now.
We'll go and look at what fixtures are on the existing, and if they're anything that is, hopefully hasn't just been replaced haphazardly, and we'll look around, but, probably just some tasteful black metal, dark sky compliant fixtures.
All right, expect to have those on your drawings next.
Oh.
More questions?
One other question. Did you, I get what you're saying about the centering and either be completely off or be perfectly centered. Did you look at the possibility of having like one more column, so you have 6 columns in 5 spaces, and if that helped you out? Or, I mean, I don't mind it the way it is, but I just was wondering if you had a look at that.
Yeah, Chair Leak, Commissioner Ensberg, we think that would be a lot of columns. And you know what I find? I deal with this issue a lot on other stuff that we design, and it's like in elevations sometimes it really accentuates that it's not quite lining up, but then when you're looking at it 3-dimensionally when it's built, and those things actually have a pretty significant gap between them, it doesn't really stand out as strongly as it would in the 2-dimensional.
That's true. And also, if you have a light fixture to the left of the door, that'll help with the composition to, mitigate that a little bit too. So, yeah, good point. Thank you.
I do have one more question. How deep are the porches?
How deep is our large porch in the front and back?
The large one's 8 feet. The side ones are pretty shallow just because of separation from the property line, and then we need to get a walkway back to that rear unit. But the ends are 8
Main
feet.
porch has got nice.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah, so they're the full width of the building and then 8 feet deep.
Perfect, thank you.
Comfortably accommodate a rocker. More questions? Comments?
Looks good.
I think it's eminently supportable.
Yeah, I think it's great. I like what you did on the central garden. I think all of that, the site work, the planning of the site is really good. I like the colors. I think it's great.
Sounds like a motion.
I'll move to approve it. What do I have to say here? Okay, project design.
So the motion would be for project design approval and articulating the various findings.
And did the commission want to include any comments or conditions as part of the project design approval, or do you want to just give it project design approval and go straight to
It
findings?
sounds like we're good with the way it is.
Yeah,
All right.
say
I want
yes.
to say lighting.
Yeah, the lighting will come as part of the detailing, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Final approval of consent?
You've got
gotta
Commissioner
read
Ensberg,
Okay,
you've got a
all right.
litany of things to,
Okay, the findings are, one, consistency with the design. The design of the project is consistent with the design guidelines applicable to the location of the project within the city, yes. Compatible with architectural character of the city and neighborhood. It's an existing building that has been preserved and adaptively reused. So yes, and then appropriate size, bulk, height, and scale, yes, it is an existing building and it is appropriate as designed. Are there more? Yes.
Yes, and just one brief clarification. There's an existing building that is being preserved and reused, and then they proposed a new building as well. Just wanted
Yes.
to-
Yes, okay. Do you want me to?
No.
Okay. Sensitivity to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. Yes, it is very sensitively designed in the historic style, preserving the historic style and matching it. Public views to the ocean and mountains are similar.
not impacted.
Okay, not impacted. And use of open space and landscaping is very well done with the central garden in the middle separating the two buildings. Minor alterations to historic resource findings. The exterior alterations are being made primarily for and will be substantially advance historic restoration of the historic resource to its original appearance, and two, the alterations are consistent with the Secretary of the Interior's standards.
Do we have a second? Did somebody?
Is there a second to that
Did we
motion?
get a second?
Second.
We
I
didn't get one,
second.
so if we
Oh.
can.
We did
is it-
now. Drury.
Perfect, thank you.
Do you want us back at full board for final, or can we do it on consent?
Is everyone comfortable with consent?
Consent.
Consent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
return to consent.
That'll be the lighting and so on, I guess, right? Yeah.
Roll call, please.
All righty. Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenvik,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Uli.
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you.
Good luck. See you at consent.
And there's a 10-day appeal for anyone who wants to.
HLC is adjourned.